Chapter 501. Hong Meng sneaked a glance, and immediately closed it again. Luckily it wasn't for him. He would be furious after reading it. Then he conjured a seal and cast a spell. More than 10 battle invitations turned into flashes of light and flew out. The battle was set for the next day. As divine beings, he was not afraid that they could not make it. Even if the 12 of them joined forces, he did not think that Chef would lose based on his abilities. It was not that he was bragging, but he could crush them all. Even if there was an accident, there was still Shining. So Lone Moon was not worried at all. Then on the second day, no one came. Lone Moon looked at the empty square, not knowing how to react. Could it be that they were too far and could not make it? No matter, he could wait another day. On the third day, they still did not come. Could it be that the divine beings here did not have the basic ability to cut through the void? On the fourth day, they still did not come. Could it be that the battle invitations were delayed, and something went wrong with Hong Meng's spell? On the 10th day, they still did not come. Could it be that they were scared out of their wits by his battle invitations? On the 15th day, they still did not come. Lone Moon, I Ching, Hong Meng, Fatty. The square, which could accommodate 10,000 people, was completely empty. A faint cold wind blew past, sending chills down one's spine. Holy shit, they actually dared to stand me up. Lone Moon's expression darkened, and he pulled out his sword. Hong Meng, tell me where they are. He was going to destroy them. Father Niu. Shining, who was nibbling on a fruit at the side, suddenly spoke. What? Those people are the first batch of indigenous people of this plane, right? So what? Can't I beat them up? No, this world has not even established rules. There is nothing. That includes words, right? Huh. You used the language of that plane to write the battle invitations. Can they understand it? Lone Moon, I Ching, Hong Meng, Fatty. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The 4 top experts were stabbed by a knife at the same time. A place called IQ suddenly ached. Although they did not want to admit it, at this moment, they were all idiots. 12 Divine Race Encampment. Half a month ago, something strange happened in the various god clans. A divine object fell from the sky and landed in front of the clan leader. The divine item was squarish and crimson, with a faint golden glow on its body. It was as if it had a mind of its own. Whenever other clansmen approached it, it would fly away and land in the hands of the clan leader. The chief observed it day and night for 10 days, and still did not know what it was. When he unintentionally opened it, he saw a long white scroll covered with tiny golden marks. Their appearances were extremely strange, and they would even float up from the god artifact one by one. They floated in the air and radiated light for a long time without falling. They were like glowing insects, emitting radiance in the dark night. It won't disappear until it's closed. The various races were astonished. Indeed, things that fell from the sky were extraordinary. There must be other uses for such a divine object. Thus, after one side investigated, they discovered that all 12 Protoss had received the exact same item. As they didn't like each other, they had a small fight every 3 days, and a big fight every 5 days. The 12 god clans, who had a reason to fight, and who had no reason to create a reason to fight, felt that they had to fight for such a good thing. Thus, without any doubt, without hesitation, the 12 god clans started fighting again. Chef, who finally reacted, and was sent by Father Niu to personally challenge them. Should he rush up and beat them up now? Or should he wait for them to finish fighting, then rush up and beat them up? Chef looked at the sky one last time, calculated the time for dinner, and decided not to wait. Thus, he directly went up and beat up the leaders of the 12 god clans one by one. He also took care of a few beasts that were not afraid of death, and rushed up to him on their own accord, bringing them back to roast. Then, he looked at the Protoss who were lying on the ground trembling in fear. He took out a stack of paper, one for each person, and forced them over. As he did so, he said with a serious expression, Invincible Civil and Military School Purple Knight Palace Branch, understand? All the gods. Only when he finished handing out the thick stack of paper, did he turn around and tie up the 12 leaders like he was wrapping dumplings. He said word by word, The few of you must understand. With that said, He dragged a string of people and flew away. The originally noisy scene fell into a strange silence. After a long time, the Protoss finally dared to get up. They looked down at the things that were forced into their hands. Instantly, a voice rang in everyone's ears. It was obvious that someone had learned his lesson last time. Not only could this advertisement be seen, but it could also be transmitted. A low and deep voice shouted from inside. Invincible Civil and Military School Purple Knight Palace Branch is a multifaceted, modern, all-round civil and military school dedicated to training high-end talents of the Protoss and building a perfect new world. Our school now has 5 teachers. 4 of them graduated from the management college in another plane, and 1 of them studied in the same college. All of them have almost perfect teaching experience, as well as perfect personal skills and near-perfect teaching methods. That voice came one after another, with a motivational quality that could not be ignored. Everyone who heard it looked confused, but they could not help but feel an impulse for no reason, especially the last sentence. Do you want to become a stronger Protoss? Do you want to be the best among the Protoss? Do you want to be the strongest Protoss? Do you want to be as powerful as the person who beat up your clan leader? Come to Invincible Civil and Military School Purple Knight Palace Branch. Invincible Civil and Military School Purple Knight Palace Branch is your wisest choice. As long as you study here, you will become the strongest king. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and pick up the electricity beside you. Apui. Come directly to Invincible Civil and Military School Purple Knight Palace Branch. Address: Purple Knight Palace, right above Purple Cloud Mountain. Limited places, first come, first served. The Protoss all looked at each other, the passionate advertising message reverberating in their ears. After a long while, someone finally whispered, Is this true? Isn't the one who lives in Purple Knight Palace the old man, who often comes to the battlefield to steal corpses, and was beaten up by the clan leader? But that person just now was really powerful. Since the clan leader is not here, should we go and take a look? Thus, Invincible Civil and Military School Purple Knight Palace Branch finally successfully recruited its first batch of students. Lone Moon asked Chef to force the sound leaflet, and the publicity was quite effective. After I Ching kidnapped the leaders of the 12 races, within a few days, a large group of Protoss arrived in front of the palace. From a rough look, there were tens of thousands of people. Perhaps it was because Chef happened to be on the battlefield when he beat them up. At that time, there were many people, and the effect of the advertisement was maximized. These people did not retreat at all, but directly turned around and came to Purple Knight Palace. Chapter 502. Although most of these students were not really here to learn, they just wanted to see the situation. Some even wanted to save the 12 people. Of course, most of them were here to watch the show. Lone Moon did not care so much. Since they were here, they could not leave. Lone Moon asked Hong Meng to expand the square by 10 times, and then directly set up layers of arrays outside, locking all the divine race people inside. To put it nicely, closed education. With students and a venue, the next step was to officially start teaching. Lone Moon then thought of a major problem. These people did not have any foundation. It was not that they did not have the foundation of cultivation, but they did not even have the basic foundation of words. And even because of the influence of the chaotic aura, there might even be problems with their understanding. Because of this, the few of them had to hold a board meeting. These divine race people obviously had to start from the most basic literacy, but the key was who would teach them. I feel that the teaching standards and methods of our previous world are still more advanced. Lone Moon glanced at Shining. Shining, I have learned for hundreds of years and have forgotten most of it. Why not you teach? Huh? Shining, who was suddenly called, was stunned. We are not learning the same system. Are you sure you want me to teach? Shit. He almost forgot that she was only a student on Earth. She even had to repeat a year in primary school. Then what should we do? Chef, you do it? I also do not remember much about enlightenment. Chef shook his head. Lone Moon could only look at Hong Meng. I remember even longer. He hurriedly shook his hand. On the other hand, Fatty raised his hand weakly. Master. What, you want to teach? No. Fatty shook his head. I want to say, what do you think of Brother Rabbit? Lone Moon. I Ching. Shining. Lone Moon stood up and patted Fatty's shoulder. Fatty, it's been so long. You finally said something sensible. Was Master praising him or scolding him? Lone Moon did not delay, and directly returned to the other plane, entered the previous small world, and went to the southern land, and appeared in front of the blissfully eating carrots in the demon monarch palace. The rabbit's paws trembled, and it almost fell off the throne. Great, great, great immortal, why are you? Before it could finish speaking, Lone Moon pulled its ear over and said seriously, Rabbit, I'm giving you a chance to ascend to immortality. Oh no, I'm giving you a chance to become a god. Do you want it? Ah, dong. This time, the rabbit really fell down. Was it hallucinating? Is identical to. It was stunned for a long time before it nodded stiffly. Yes, I do, but it was just a rabbit. Becoming an immortal was already an extravagant hope, let alone becoming a god. As long as you think about it, I'm leaving. Lone Moon did not waste any more time talking nonsense with it. He picked up the rabbit and left. The rabbit was dumbfounded. By the time it reacted, it had already been thrown in front of a large group of strange animals. There were so many of them that it couldn't even see the end of them, and every single one of them was emitting a divine aura that made it tremble with fear. Rabbit's legs turned to jelly. If not for Lone Moon holding on to it, it would have fallen to the ground. They were all gods. Had it arrived at the god realm? Rabbit wanted to faint for a moment. Obviously, Lone Moon did not give it the chance. He directly stuffed a book into its hands. Here, this is the teaching material. You just need to teach them how to read for a while. The rabbit had not recovered from its daze. Read. Divine race? It. Great. Great immortal, no, great god. I'm just a rabbit. Why? You can't read? I can read. This was not a question of whether it could read or not, right? Besides, why couldn't the divine race read? That's good. I'll leave it to you, Rabbit. Lone Moon patted its shoulder and directly grabbed it, and flew up to a high platform. He even set up several layers of arrays for it. The rabbit only felt that the divine aura that was suppressing it and suffocating it disappeared in an instant. When it regained its senses, Lone Moon was already gone. Only the rabbit was left standing high up on the platform. Below it was a black mass of divine race army that stretched as far as the eye could see. The rabbit's legs began to tremble again. Was this some ultimate test that great immortal had set for it? But since it was already here, it could only bite the bullet. With trembling hands, it flipped open the book. It was indeed a beginner's book. It was simple and easy to understand. It even had pictures. It wiped the cold sweat from its forehead and gritted its teeth. It turned around and sat on the praying mat on the platform. Almost instantly, an array was activated under its feet. A virtual image of it appeared in the sky. That image was very wide, almost covering the entire square. It appeared clearly in front of the students of the various races. The various races, who had never seen such high technology, were stunned. They quieted down immediately and looked up at the virtual image in the sky in shock. At the same time, the rabbit's voice was clearly transmitted to everyone's ears. The rabbit flipped open the book in its hands. Instantly, the contents of the book appeared in the air, like a PowerPoint presentation. Cough. Now let's start the lesson. The rabbit officially began its beginner's teaching career. Hence, from then on, there would often be sounds of geese drifting through the purple night palace, grass on the plains, and so on. The rabbit was a little afraid at first. After all, it was a group of Protoss in front of it, and it was just an ordinary lop-eared rabbit that had taken the back door to reach the 12th rank. Under the suppression of their race, it was natural for them to be afraid. But after being afraid for so long, it got used to it. Azero, not only did he teach it, but he would also encourage everyone to chant along with it. In the beginning, the Protoss below also harbored a sense of curiosity and novelty, and earnestly learned from the rabbit for a few days. But after a period of time, he found that every day was boring learning how to read. Some of them even wanted to rush out of the array formation. They were used to being wild, and had never been restrained. In addition, they were born valiant, so their tempers were naturally not too good. Otherwise, They wouldn't be constantly fighting and causing chaos in the world. After failing to break out of the array formation, the divine race began to target the rabbit on the high platform. He wanted to grab it and use it as a hostage, but unfortunately, he was injured by the formation on it. Since Lone Moon could bring the rabbit here without worry, he naturally had already thought of a way to deal with it. Looking at the square that was starting to be in a mess after a few days, Lone Moon directly released the head of the cult chef. There was only one effective way to deal with this group of troublesome students, and that was to just beat them up. Hence, after beating everyone up again, the entire teaching square was restored to order. Chef also carried his sword and patrolled the square from time to time every day. If he found someone disobedient, he would stab them with his sword. Anyway, the divine race had thick skin and flesh. Even if Chef attacked and got injured, he would recover in a few years. Chapter 503. In the beginning, Chef prevented them from betraying their master and hurting Rabbit. Then, he prevented them from escaping. Then he prevented them from fighting among themselves. In the end, he only had to prevent them from sleeping. Rabbit's teaching also achieved some initial results. Whether it was Rabbit or the divine beings below, they actually did not need to sleep. In other words, there was no need for breaks between classes. They could continue teaching day and night. As a chatterbox, Rabbit had an extraordinary obsession with teaching. If they did not understand it once, he would say it twice. If they did not understand it twice, he would say it 10 times until they understood. Especially after discovering that they could not hurt him at all, he completely let go. He used his full level of verbal cannon. At most, he would chew on a carrot halfway to adjust his words. In fact, when he encountered a disobedient student, he would even stop and patiently guide them to give him some advice. "Sai, why do you have to do this? You know that you can't break this array, and will even suffer a backlash. Why would he do such a foolish thing that would only bring him more benefits than benefits? Can't we be a little more peaceful? I'm here to teach you how to read. As long as you know and learn, you will learn in a few years. As the saying goes, one can only become a demon after suffering the hardest. Blah 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 blah. Hey, Supreme Divinity, what are you doing? How can you bite the divine friend beside you? As the saying goes, one must abstain from eating before one can cultivate. They are at least classmates who listen to classes together. How can you eat them? No matter how big the grudge is with such feelings, it is time to let it go. You have to know. Blah blah blah. Oh, and that student who is scratching his feet. Please put them down. Can't you see that the students beside you have all fainted? We are all gods. We are fated to be gathered here. We should understand and respect each other. Can't you continue to scratch after school? And blah blah blah. If Rabbit's teaching skills were at level 1, then his ability to talk nonsense was at level 10. He would definitely read until you started to doubt human beings. No, the kind that doubted divine beings. At first, the divine beings did not know how to respond. They could only grit their teeth and listen to him until they felt that the whole world was filled with his persuasion. What was worse was that in order to help them learn how to read as soon as possible, the array that Lone Moon set up on the platform was directly connected to their divine senses. In other words, no matter what he said, the words would appear in the minds of the people listening below like subtitles. Therefore, as long as she opened her mouth, the golden words would drill straight into the minds of the gods, the kind that could not be blocked. No one could withstand such a barrage of attacks. So in the end, whenever it opened its mouth and said, that, all the gods burst into tears. We were wrong. I won't do it again. Master, I beg you. Can we go to class normally? You're worth teaching. The rabbit nodded satisfactorily and nibbled on a carrot while it was at it. The completely unemployed teaching director I Ching. It was better for him to return to the rear hall and help his master cook. Lone Moon also expressed his approval of the quality of Rabbit's teaching. Even his attitude towards Fatty was much better. He also began to consider the idea of letting the rabbit take on a few more classes after the literacy class ended. Of course, as a reward for an outstanding employee, he waved his hand and approved Rabbit's request to open up a plot of land at the back of the mountain to plant some radishes. Hong Meng. The floor seemed to be his. Rabbit taught for a whole 3 years. As it did not stop day and night, it taught like a cramming duck. It finally allowed these tens of thousands of illiterate people to lay a good foundation of words. Especially in the later stages, when Rabbit often wanted to reason, causing them to be highly nervous. Almost all of them could repeat fluently after Rabbit said it once, or else Rabbit would say it 100 times. Lone Moon also felt that it was time to start teaching other classes, so he decided to take a break and rest for a day. It would be his turn to teach starting tomorrow. Almost at the same time that Rabbit walked down the stage, all the gods heaved a sigh of relief. Their backs that had been straight for several years were instantly lowered. Some could not bear the sudden relief and fainted directly. Too scary. Even scarier than the one with the sword. So the so-called rabbit race was actually such a scary race? All the gods trembled in fear. Rabbit, who had finally finished class, was already happily pulling his good friend Fatty to plant radishes. After all, he had eaten them for 3 years, and had finished all the stock. Lone Moon was supposed to start teaching the next day, but he realized that those gods who had fainted had not regained consciousness, so he had to delay it for another day. On the 3rd day, he started the 2nd class. This time, he was the one teaching personally. The first class was about transformation. That's right, although all the gods here were born with the art of transformation, but they could only change their original form, become bigger, smaller, and different colors. For example, in the field now, everyone had compressed their bodies to become several times smaller, otherwise they would not be able to sit down at all. But none of them could transform. The so-called transformation was to transform into human form, not a simple illusion or something like a temporary image, but the entire body and meridians had to change. The reason why they had to transform into human form was because the human form was the best form for cultivation, commonly known as the Tao body. Transforming into the Tao body was the first step to entering the Tao. Lone Moon was much more straightforward than Rabbit. He directly cast a spell and transmitted the transformation method into the consciousness of all the gods. He only left a sentence: "Follow this method and cultivate by yourselves. I will come and check in 5 days." All the gods were quite happy at first. They did not expect that this new master was much more straightforward than Master Rabbit. Finally, they did not have to endure the pain of a long continuous sentence drilling into their consciousness. All the gods felt that they had seen the light of hope, until they fell back to hell 5 days later. They never thought that Lone Moon's check was a one-by-one check. If the transformation did not pass, they had to start all over again until they learned it. Not only that, his requirements for transformation were also extremely strict. It was not as simple as transforming into 4 limbs and hiding one's original form. Too tall, too thin, too fat, too ugly, too short, too. Even too little hair was not allowed. Even if the transformation clothes were ugly, it was not allowed to pass. All the gods, they kept feeling that this master was even more sick than the previous one. What should they do? Please wait online, it's quite urgent. The kind that could kill. It was not that no one resisted, but because they really could not beat him. Forced to transform hundreds of times every day. Of course there were many gods who were so irritable that they wanted to fight. But before they could get within 3 feet of him, they were beaten down. He indeed did not know how to nag like Master Rabbit, but he knew how to use poison. You transformed into such an ugly form, and you still have the nerve to show it to me. Do you want me to help you reforge? Reforge? Is your original form a pig? Are you so fat that you want to change races? Do you need me to send you into reincarnation to satisfy you? Reforge. This face of yours was transformed by that green bird just now, right? You are a mongoose. Why are you trying to claim kinship with others? Reforge. And the 2 of you, why do you look so alike? Why do you look like a married couple in front of me? I am not even single. What right do you have to pretend to be a married couple in front of me? Reforge. Chapter 504. Towards the end, Lone Moon said coldly, "If you can't even transform properly, you can only be little animals to be eaten." Lone Moon did not know if it was because he had a problem with their low efficiency of transformation, or because he was tired of beating them up so badly. At first, the races didn't know what he meant. Until the next day, he asked Chef to move the kitchen to the empty space in front of the hall. In front of the races, he took out the corpses of his kind. He began to boil water, pluck feathers, cut, fry. At a table not far away sat a figure dressed in red, holding chopsticks and knocking on the bowl, asking from time to time, "Chef, are you done? I'm so hungry." Sigh. Why did he move the kitchen? It was already a minute late. "Yes, master, I'll be done soon, master." I Ching responded, stirring the food even faster. All the races shuddered, only feeling a chill straight into their hearts. What Exalted Master said, little animals to be eaten, would really be eaten. So scary. "Mama, I want to go home." No, Exalted Master. I want to listen to the lesson." Suddenly, all the divine races began to miss the previous Exalted Master Rabbit. Being nagged was better than being eaten. What was even scarier was that they actually felt a little fragrant. Under the pressure of being eaten at any moment, all the races began a new wave of learning with all their might. Their level of effort was even more than when Rabbit was in class. Even during the 3 times Lone Moon went to eat during the break between classes, they did not forget to make use of the time to practice. Only when Rabbit occasionally strolled over, all of them gave him a nostalgic look. Rabbit was dumbfounded. Maybe this was a group of good students who remembered old times. As the saying goes, there is only motivation when there is pressure. In less than 2 years, all the divine races learned how to transform. The originally messy square instantly changed into a group of handsome men and beautiful women, looking like stars. It could be said to have set the high standards of the divine race's attractiveness. From this moment on, Lone Moon officially taught them the orthodox cultivation method. Actually, the divine race's physique was already very strong. Naturally, there was no room for improvement. The only difference was how to use their own abilities more rationally and flexibly. And these were mostly based on their own understanding. What Lone Moon mainly taught was still the way to cultivate God power. Since these gods were the first batch of living beings in the world, the primal chaos energy in their bodies had to be purged. By practicing breathing and purifying their divine power, they could achieve the effect of purging the primal chaos energy from their bodies. The reason why they were so irritable and bloodthirsty was because of the chaotic energy in their bodies. These were emotions that were almost never seen in the divine race of the other plane. To the Shun clan, who could already transform into their Taoist bodies, this was not difficult at all. After Lone Moon taught them once, and told them the things to take note of, they could already understand. Furthermore, the chaotic aura in his body was indeed decreasing. However, this was a very long process that required a lot of patience and willpower. Of course, he didn't know if the other races had the patience and perseverance for his team of teachers, but it was definitely possible for them to calm down. Compared to the previous 2 classes, which were filled with people reading aloud or wailing, the entire teaching square was as quiet as a chicken. Lone Moon had nothing to do, so he released his divine perception and carefully scanned the tens of thousands of students present. He realized that there were differences between the Protoss. Apart from the previous 12, who were forced to learn, and were often beaten up the most badly, the rest of the divine race were not top-notch. The cultivation levels of the other divine races were actually not the highest. Just like the dragon race, the golden dragon was the highest, the black dragon was the lowest, and all the water race had the opportunity to cultivate to become a dragon. And the phoenix race's 9-feathered phoenix was the strongest. Among them, the 9-feathered fire phoenix was the strongest. Although the other 1-feathered ones were also phoenixes, they were obviously not on the same level. It was the same for these divine races. However, the difference this time was only in terms of brute force. There was actually no technical content. So even if they attacked together, they would be easily beaten down by Chef. The only ones who knew a little about cultivation were the 12 reincarnated ones. Although they lost their memories, they retained their cultivation because they were reincarnated. So they instinctively knew some moves that others did not know. This was also the reason why they could join forces to defeat Hong Meng. So compared to directly teaching them how to cultivate and improve their martial skills, it was better to teach them how to understand the heavenly Tao. Actually, be it the so-called heavenly Tao or nomological laws, they were all the lowest standards to maintain the operation of the entire world, the endless cycle. This was like the lowest bottom line of this plane. Within this bottom line, all living beings were protected, living and multiplying, the cycle of reincarnation. There were 3,000 great Taos for you to choose, but you could not touch this bottom line. For example, like the invaders, or like divine imperial sects cheating to ascend, these were all not allowed. The former would cause the plane to be unstable. The latter disrupted reincarnation. The reason why the heavenly Tao locked that small world was actually not just because this method of ascension was evil and dishonorable, and even more not because Fatty was once a fiend god, but because they disrupted the order of reincarnation, so that souls could be directly reincarnated without going through the underworld. And it was definitely not only Fatty who was doing this. The pills that Hao Ran Court refined that contained the soul-guiding powder was the best proof. They even distributed these pills to the various sections. This way, even if they were already dead, they could use the same method to reincarnate into the same small world, and then just walk the path of cultivation again. They must have their own internal ranking to decide who could enjoy Fatty's flesh and blood first. This way, they seriously violated the heavenly Tao's bottom line. So the heavenly Tao directly sealed the realm gate. Don't you want to ascend? Then none of you can think of ascending. Anyway, those who had not reincarnated in the underworld were consuming their own souls. Even if they did not discover the abnormality of this small world, after a long time, the heavenly Tao would naturally be able to make this group of people who violated the bottom line disappear forever. Thinking of this, Lone Moon heaved a sigh of relief. He knew what he had to teach these divine beings, who were born at the top of the food chain. Of course, he could not directly tell them what was going on with the heavenly Tao. He recalled the previous plane, all the concepts about the heavenly Tao rules, and recalled some of the Taoist information that he found at Shen Ying's place. After organizing his words, he officially began his lecture. He talked about the heavenly Tao, the Tao of all beings, human Tao, and even the Tao of self one by one. Then he found a few Taoist classics such as Tao Te Ching, Peace Sutra, De Daoluan, and so on to support the stage. He first read them, but worried that they would not understand, he carefully explained them in the vernacular. Chapter 505. Although Lone Moon was already trying his best to teach, logic was logic. Actually, it still depended on the divine race's own understanding. But he did not expect that after he explained it once, there would actually be people who understood it and directly went into meditation on the square. And there were 4 or 5 divine races. The god power around them instantly became many times denser. Their bodies began to appear with a soft blue light, and faintly with some heavenly power, causing the divine race beside them to jump in fright. A sense of fear extended from the bottom of their hearts. But different from the fear when they were beaten up before, there was a sense of awe. Lone Moon asked the divine race beside him to be quiet, not to disturb others in meditation, before continuing to preach. With this, more and more people went into meditation. They were divine races in the first place. Naturally, their qualifications were not bad. Especially after Rabbit's force-feeding teaching a few years ago, it became even easier to understand. Previously, it was only because of the influence of the remnant chaos chi. After learning to transform and regulate their breathing, this influence naturally became smaller and smaller. Looking at the square, the god power became more and more abundant, even faintly showing signs of materializing. These few days, there were even several rounds of spirit rain. Even the radishes that Rabbit planted in the back mountain matured in 4 hours. Rabbit's hands were sore from all that. Not to mention the other crazy growing divine Ganoderma and immortal herbs. I Ching really could not watch it anymore. He could only go down the mountain to set up an array, to guide the excess god power out, into the ground, or into forming immortal meridians, or into the world. He casually asked the former master of Purple Night Palace, Hong Meng, for help. But he did not move, instead looking up at the sky in a daze, his eyes wide and face full of shock, pointing shakily at the sky, revealing an expression that was uncertain whether to be surprised or happy. Lord, Heavenly, Heavenly Tao, it's starting to form. This was too fast. The flow of time here was different, and in order to stabilize the plane, Hong Meng and the others purposely accelerated the time in this side of the world. Actually, ever since Lord helped to split open the plane, it had already been millions of years. But even so, after so many years of hard work, there was no way for the Heavenly Tao to be born. How long had it been? But the Heavenly Tao was already showing signs of being born. I Ching looked up, sensing carefully only to discover that there was indeed a trace of nomological power in this world. His eyes darkened. He turned to look at the high platform, who was still focused on preaching, and instantly understood something. He looked at the person sprawled on the chair beside him, nibbling on a fruit. Master, could Father Niu be? Xin Ying's hands paused. She tilted her head and said, Yes, I'm a good leader. The corner of his mouth twitched, but he didn't say anything. Raising his head once more to look at a certain person on the elevated platform, Zhang Xian sighed. What else could he do? Who asked him to be my teacher? I can only continue to spoil him. Yes, it was definitely not because Master was lazy. Lone Mun's lecture lasted for more than 10 years. In the beginning, he still seriously explained the textbook in detail, and occasionally interacted with the students. Seeing that more and more people were meditating, he felt a little happy. But no matter how exciting the content was, it would get annoying after 4 or 5 times. Therefore, later on, he simply changed the array formation on the high platform and stuck a few recording talismans on it. The content was the same anyway, but the amazing thing was that this kind of skimpy teaching method was really useful. More and more people were meditating, so Lone Moon continued to play the video with a peace of mind. And because they continued to absorb the God power around them as they listened to the lecture, the influence of the chaos chi in their bodies became less and less. They had long lost the fierce look on their faces when they first came here. They looked much more peaceful and more like the real divine race. He glanced at the square. Everyone was sitting neatly. Even if they were watching the video, they were watching it seriously. There were still some people who were not meditating. Perhaps their comprehension skills were really not good enough. He thought for a moment, then opened the array formation that imprisoned them. The chaos chi in their bodies had already disappeared. Their minds were clear, and their consciousness was no longer affected. Naturally, they would understand the benefits of this cultivation. Although their comprehension skills were not good, it was also a good choice to go out and develop more fellow disciples. So it was time to let them out. At first, no one dared to move. They thought it was another term assignment to loosen the reins only to grasp better. But some of the bolder ones walked out, and after realizing that everything was fine, they left one after another. The number of people meditating in the square decreased by more than half. The remaining people were only those who had not woken up from their meditation. The duration of meditation depended on each person's understanding. It could be as short as a few hours, or as long as a few hundred, or even 1,000 years without waking up. The remaining people included the 12 reincarnated ancient gods. Among them, some were still meditating, and some were awake, but unwilling to leave. Perhaps they understood something from listening to the lecture. That was why they did not want to leave. Lone Moon did not bother too much. The most worrying thing was still the human race below. This was the first problem that needed to be solved in this plane. The matters of the divine race were basically on the right track. There was no need to worry too much. It was time to go to the human race to take a look. He directly brought the cheat master and disciple away, leaving the other 3 behind. Now he was relieved. Although there were many divine race people in this square, Hong Meng and Fatty were both ancient gods. Even if something happened, they could at least escape. As for Rabbit, there was even less to worry about. Those divine race people now trembled when they saw it, afraid that it would speak. The psychological trauma was even more terrifying. Following the direction that Hong Meng pointed, they came to the human territory that was isolated. Only when they arrived did they realize that it was indeed far away from the battlefield of the gods. There was even a large sea area in between. The entire continent was sealed off by Hong Meng using a special sorcery, just like how God Fiend specially drew out the outer realm. The entire continent was surrounded by a huge barrier that blocked all the overly powerful living beings outside, including the divine race. Lone Moon directly released his divine perception to scan the area. He found that the situation was better than he imagined. Perhaps because Hong Meng isolated the continent in time, the number of human race people was not small. It was not smaller than the total population of the small worlds in their plane. He originally thought that he would see a primitive society. Unexpectedly, it was no different from the small worlds from before. There was even a national language and so on. Apart from the smaller scale, it was no different from the other plane. Let's go down and take a look. He pointed to the nearest forest outside the town and directly flew down. The few of them were just about to leave the forest when suddenly 4 or 5 people jumped out, looking at the 3 of them with a guarded expression. Who are you? Each of them was holding a knife, axe, or other metal weapon in their hands. They all aimed at the 3 of them. Lone Moon. Were they being robbed? Chapter 506. Seeing that they didn't respond, the leader, a tall and strong man, waved the knife in his hand and shouted, "Where did you come from? Do you have a travel permit?" Travel permit? Lone Moon was stunned. So it wasn't a robbery. He quickly put on a professional smile. "Big brother, Who's your big brother?" The man interrupted him directly, his eyes even more guarded. "Cut the crap. Hurry up and take the travel permit. Otherwise don't blame us for being rude." Lone Moon was speechless. This was the first time in his life that he encountered a failure in a negotiation. He was just thinking about what the travel permit looked like, and whether he should directly make one for the other party to see. "Hurry up." Another younger man at the side also urged, and even glanced at Shining, who was closest to him. "Travel permit?" "No." Shining tilted her head, but handed over a fruit. "Do you want the fruit?" Lone Moon's mouth twitched. "Shining, don't make trouble. Who would want your fruit? And the one in your hand, isn't it the one that wasn't ripe last time? The one that you wanted to give to him but didn't? Can't you show some sincerity when you treat people to food?" He was about to explain. The man opposite glanced at the fruit, turned to the others and said, "This person is fine." With that said, he took the fruit, and even pulled Shining to his side, and then continued to take out his weapon, pointing it at him and Chef. "Lone Moon. I Ching. How could this be freaking possible? Where's yours?" The man continued to look at the 2 fiercely, grabbed the weapon in his hand and shouted, "Those without a travel permit are transformed from those man-eating monsters. Catch them." As soon as he finished speaking, the others all took up their weapons, ready to stab. "Wait." Lone Moon thought of something in a flash. The corner of his mouth twitched, and then took out a bag of pastries and handed it over. Chef also reacted and took out half a pork knuckle. Those people took it suspiciously, picked it up and tasted it, then put away their weapons. "If you have a travel permit, you should have said so earlier. It wouldn't be good if there was a misunderstanding." The leading man looked at the 2 with some dissatisfaction, as if blaming them for being too slow. He thought for a while and added, "But your travel permits are quite delicious. How do you make them?" Lone Moon. I Ching. Are you sure you're checking for directions and not robbing? Alas, the town hasn't been peaceful recently. That's why the checks on the people who come and go are stricter. The man sighed and continued, "You're not from here, right? Please don't be offended. We're doing this for the sake of the town's safety." Lone Moon regained his composure and immediately stepped forward. He resumed his businesslike smile and asked, "You're flattering me. This is how it should be. We can understand. May I ask, big brother, what has happened in this town? It's all because of those monsters." The man sighed and said, "Recently, more than a dozen people have gone missing in the town, so we are strictly checking the road passes. All right, don't stay here any longer. Hurry up and enter the city. It'll be easier to bump into them when it gets dark." After saying that, he waved his hand to urge them. Lone Moon did not continue asking. He pulled Shining and Chef towards the direction of the town. He vaguely guessed that the monster they were talking about should be something like a demon or a spirit beast, and one that could transform, but he did not know why its food was a road pass. When they reached the town, he looked up. There was indeed some demonic chi left in the town, but the demon might have already left. He turned to a peddler who wrote selling road passes and asked. Only then did he know that demons' food was humans, so they usually did not bring other food with them. And most demons retained their bestial nature. They were selfish and protective of their food. They would not share their food with others. So they used this method to distinguish between real and fake. The corner of Lomun's mouth twitched when he heard this method. This method could at most identify some little demons who did not understand the world. If they really wanted to harm people, it would be strange if they could. But thinking about it carefully, there were no cultivators in this plane. It was already not easy for them to think of this method. Could he say that it was fortunate that there was a chef in their team? Otherwise, they would probably be thought of as accomplices of the monsters. The three of them walked around the town for a day. They basically knew the situation on the side of the human race. When Hongming isolated the human race, they only cared about the chaos of the divine race. They forgot that there were also demon beasts, demons, beasts, and so on in this world. So the human race was still quite dangerous. Their biggest advantage was the advantage of numbers. When they met the alien races, they basically had no power to resist. Just like the demon that had already eaten more than 10 people in this town. They might not be able to defeat it if they really faced it. The final solution was to move away from here. Therefore, the best way to solve this problem was to teach the human race how to cultivate, so that they could have the ability to protect themselves when facing demons and ghosts. In other words, their school had to continue. They might even have to open a second branch. Father Niu, are we going to advertise again? I Ching asked subconsciously. Of course we have to advertise. Wait, why did you pull out your sword? Seeing that Chef had summoned his sword out of habit, Lone Moon hurriedly pressed it down. Not advertising. I Ching tilted his head. Tell me, who are we going to fight this time? I'll be in charge of fighting. You'll be in charge of advertising. Who said we're going to fight? No, I'm not talking about advertising. I don't mean fighting. What was he so excited about? I Ching was stunned. Didn't the divine race beat them up last time? Wasn't advertising a verb? Fighting is only suitable for the divine race. Lone Moon glared at him. How can civilized people like us draw our swords so easily? Not even a kitchen knife. Then what should we do? Same rules. Let's build a sect first. Human cultivators should be much easier to teach than the divine race. After all, people who lived under the shadow of demons and ghosts all year round should be easier to deceive. No, recruit. All right. I Ching nodded. After thinking for a while, he took out a map and said, This is the map of the human race that I asked Hongming for before we left. If you want to build a sect, you can choose a location based on this map. Lomun took a look. Indeed, it was the whole picture of this isolated continent. It was surrounded by the sea, and was independent of the entire plain. He did not choose within the continent. Instead, he chose an immortal mountain near the coast. Seeing that he had chosen, I Ching continued. When I came out, I caught a newborn immortal meridian at the foot of the mountain. If we build a sect here, we can plant the immortal meridian here. Yes, this place is isolated all year round. Compared to other places, the spirit chi is indeed too thin. Not to mention the divine race's territory that was full of God power. Not bad. It's hard for you to think of collecting an immortal meridian. Wait. Chapter 507. Lone Moon narrowed his eyes and scanned Chef from head to toe. Why do I feel like you're acting weird recently? It's one thing that you're not following Shining around and causing trouble, but you're even helping her? He was too obedient. Tell me, what did the two of you do? I Ching stiffened for a moment, still maintaining his poker face. His eyes turned towards Shining, and then he shook his head hard. No, we didn't do anything shameful. Are you wrong? You've already said it out loud. Don't turn your face away if you dare. With that said, he reached out and said, Take out the storage bag. I Ching hesitated for a moment, but finally handed it over. He opened it to take a look. Apart from a pile of ingredients and cooking utensils, there was only a pitiful sword stuffed in the corner. It was so clean that there wasn't even a spirit stone. Lone Moon was still worried. He turned and reached out to Shining. And yours? I don't need to go through security check, do I? Shining grabbed her bag tightly. You have to go through security check. Alright, you have to return it to me. She quickly took out a few fruits and held them in her hands before handing them over. Lone Moon opened it to take a look, and his mouth twitched. He had thought it was just an ordinary storage bag, but when he opened it, there was a huge storage space inside, almost as big as a small mystic realm. Not only that, there was really a place inside that could be planted, and a forest of spirit fruit trees. No wonder Shenning didn't go to pick the fruits, even though she didn't stop eating. So it was planted here. Needless to say, this small mystic realm that looked like a storage bag was definitely secretly given to her by Chef to cultivate. Not to mention the mountains of snacks and pastries. Was she going through winter? How much food did she stock up? More importantly, some of them even he had never seen before. This little bastard who ate all the food alone. She actually had the cheek to snatch food from him. That was too much. I'm not confiscating half. He waved his hand and took away half of the food inside, along with the ripe fruits on the tree. That's it, I'm leaving. Lone Moon stuffed the half-empty bag back and turned to walk across the street. Mother ***. Master, don't be anxious. Seeing that he had walked far away, I Ching silently took out a storage bag that looked exactly the same as the one he had just seen, and sent a voice transmission. Your bag is here. The one that Father Nyo searched just now was just a spare. Good chef. Shenning immediately took it. And, thank goodness there was a bigger one. Master. I Ching looked at Lone Moon who had already walked far away and said hesitantly, Father Nyo, did you see something? We still have to continue. That gave him a fright. Shenning looked up at him and patted his shoulder. Up until now, everything is fine. But if in the future? Don't worry, he is Father Nyo. What should I do now that I'm even more worried? He would definitely flip out, he definitely would. What are you two waiting for? Lone Moon turned back and called out to the two of them. We'll stay here tonight. I've already booked a room. Hurry over. Yes, Father Nyo, no problem, Father Nyo. He decided that he had to stock up more food for his master now. Who knows, he might really run out of food in the future. The night was dark like water, and the full moon hung high in the sky. Perhaps because there was a monster outside the town causing trouble. The town was already silent at night. Under the moonlight, wisps of demonic chi began to appear in the forest outside the town. Lone Moon pulled I Ching and Shenning out of the town, searching for the wisp of demonic chi that he felt during the day, and headed straight for the forest. Immortal cultivators had not started appearing in this plain yet, so the best way to spread the word was to subdue this demon and let the people in the town know what a cultivator was. He had already noticed during the day that the one causing trouble in this town was only a small demon. Its demonic chi was very weak, and it was hiding in this forest. Lone Moon originally thought that it would take them a while to find it. Unexpectedly, less than 2 minutes after the three of them entered the forest, a figure came out of the forest and fell in front of them. When it fell, it hit a rock and even moved to the side before letting out a cry of pain. Aya, Lone Moon. Shenning. I Ching. Perhaps seeing that the three of them were indifferent and had no intention of going forward to help it up, the fallen figure did not get up, and then let out an even louder cry. Ayaya. Aya, hey, it hurts. The three of them still did not move. Finally, the other could not take it anymore and turned to look at them. With some surprise and a little anger, it reminded them, Aren't you going to help me up? The three of them exchanged a look and then replied in unison, No. This was different from what they had thought. What exactly do you want? Lone Moon glanced at it. Did it think they were blind? Not to mention this pretentious performance, this was obviously a demon, right? Even if it did not know how to transform, it should at least cover that huge squirrel tail behind it. That was an insult to their intelligence, okay? The squirrel demon was stunned for a moment, completely unaware that it had been exposed. Seeing that they had no intention of helping it, it could only get up by itself. It patted the dust off its clothes and picked up the bamboo basket on the ground. As if afraid of exposing its identity, it even pulled the hat on its head and wrapped itself in a loose outer robe. Except for its tail. Cough. Thank you, kind people. It coughed and continued to speak with a childish and flustered voice. Since you helped me up, and I happened to pick some rare good mushrooms, why not? We didn't help you up. Before it could finish, Lone Moon interrupted it directly. The squirrel demon, whose rhythm was interrupted, was stunned, and a trace of panic flashed across its face. It was stunned for a moment, ignoring his exposing, and continued to act. No, you just helped me. I will sell you the mushrooms. Look, I just picked them. With that said, it held the basket in its hands and extended it towards them. They saw that in its basket, there was really a basket of mushrooms, one red and one white. The red one was still faintly suffused with a trace of demonic aura, and the other was a spirit plant with spirit chi. Lone Moon glanced at the squirrel demon. What kind of mushrooms do you want to sell? The squirrel demon was delighted, and the words "scheme has succeeded" were clearly written on its face. It quickly took out the red one and said, this one. After thinking about it, it was a little worried, so it picked up another white one and added, you have to buy this one too, but you have to eat the red one first. After eating it, you can eat the white one when you wake up in the morning. You can't only buy one kind. Lone Moon's eyes narrowed. You mean if I eat this red one, I will only wake up after a night of coma? Yes, but you still have to eat the white one. Otherwise it will be very uncomfortable. The squirrel demon nodded honestly. I see. Lone Moon nodded. Is this your first time coming out to cheat people? Chapter 508. How did you know? The squirrel demon answered subconsciously, then reacted and looked at him with wide eyes, panicking. You. It stuttered for a long time, but did not get an answer. Tears gathered in its eyes, and it looked like it was about to cry. After a while it asked carefully with a sobbing voice, do you want to buy mushrooms? The three of them. Such bad acting skills. Which school did he graduate from? It did not give up and handed 2 mushrooms, one red and one white, to Lone Moon. Just buy a pair, okay? Or I can give it to you. Seeing that they did not take it, it panicked and immediately took the whole basket. I'll give you all the white ones. I took a long time to pick them. Just buy one red one, okay? No. He directly revealed his identity. You're a demon, right? How did you know? The squirrel stiffened. A trace of panic flashed in its eyes, but it still held the basket stubbornly. Then do you want to buy mushrooms? No. Was this a retard? It did not forget to sell mushrooms at this time. The squirrel became even more anxious and turned to hand the basket to Shening. Do you want to buy one? Shening looked down. I don't want vegetables. It could only raise it to chef. I don't make vegetables. The squirrel's face turned pale, as if the sky had fallen. The blue chest in its hand loosened, and immediately the mushrooms fell to the ground. The whole demon did not feel good. It sat directly on the ground and broke down crying. Wah! There's no time. Why doesn't anyone buy my mushrooms? Little Flower will be eaten. It's all my fault. I can't save her, wah! It howled in grief, and tears streamed down its face like beans. Its originally short body shrunk into a ball, and its large tail slapped the ground again and again. It did not even care about hiding its identity now. It let its hat fall, revealing 2 drooping triangular ears. Shening. I Ching. Lone Moon. The demons of this plane were like this? Why did they have a sense of guilt like bullying a child? Don't cry. Lone Moon had a headache and couldn't help but say, I want to cry. It howled even louder. Little Flower is going to be eaten. It's all my fault. I hurt her. Wow. What Little Flower? Hey, if you cry again I'll take care of you. Is this a child? Accept me. Anyway, Little Flower is gone, and I don't want to live anymore. Wow. Holy shit. Is this little demon addicted to crying? Just as he was about to conjure a hand seal, Shening stepped forward and stuffed the fruit into his mouth. As soon as the crying stopped, the world fell silent. Mushroom, who wants to eat your Little Flower? Shening squatted down and asked. The squirrel demon was stunned and looked at her with teary eyes. Holding the fruit in his mouth with both hands, he replied pitifully, I'm a squirrel, not a mushroom. After saying that, he did not forget to hold the fruit in his hands and bite into it while sniffing and answering. It's the Tiger King. He caught Little Flower. There were other demons here. Who is Little Flower? Shining continued to ask. Little Flower is my best friend. The squirrel nodded as if emphasizing. She's like you, she will give me delicious food. When I was still a little squirrel, I lived on the tree next to her house. She would give me a big pine nut every day. He's so good looking. Look, I look just like him now. Lone Moon was stunned. He took a look at its incomplete form. That Little Flower was a human. But later, she was caught by the Tiger King. It looked sad again. The Tiger King said that if I could bring other people back to him, he would return Little Flower to me. I waited here every day, but those people were afraid of me and refused to go back with me. So, I wanted to use mushrooms. Yesterday, the Tiger King said that if I didn't bring people back, he would eat Little Flower. The more it spoke, the softer its voice became, and its head drooped lower and lower. Finally, it looked at them unwilling to give up. You really don't intend to buy a mushroom? You've already said your purpose, who would buy it? Alright, bring us to that tiger demon. Lone Moon said directly. We'll help you save Little Flower. If he guessed correctly, that tiger demon was the one that had been causing trouble in the town recently. And this squirrel didn't have any bloody resentment on it. It seemed that it had never harmed anyone. The Little Flower he was talking about should also be a human. Really, its eyes lit up and then darkened again. But the Tiger King is very powerful. Lone Moon couldn't be bothered to explain to it. He directly picked it up with one hand and flew up on his sword. Where? The squirrel was startled and quickly hugged its tail, then weakly pointed to the right. The few of them flew in the direction pointed by the squirrel. The tiger demon's lair wasn't far. They arrived in less than 2 minutes. Before they got close, they smelled a strong bloody smell from afar. It even overshadowed the demonic aura that wasn't very strong. Lone Moon looked at the cave entrance that emitted an unpleasant stench, frowned and walked in. The squirrel was already scared out of its wits. It slipped to the back, thought about it, and turned to hide behind Shining. Those who gave it fruits were all good people. Once they entered the cave, the bloody smell inside was even stronger, and even a little choking. There was a faint cracking sound under their feet. I Ching turned his hand and summoned a ball of fire. It instantly lit up the cave. The cave wasn't very big, and one could see everything at a glance. The tiger demon wasn't in the cave. The whole cave was filled with bones of all kinds of beasts, but more of humans. Some had become white bones, and some still had flesh and blood, emitting waves of stench. Great, the Tiger King isn't here. The squirrel looked happy. He rushed out in an instant and began to search in the cave. Little Flower, where's Little Flower? I'm here to save you, Little Flower. It shouted for a long time, but there was no response. It began to search in a panic, and even began to pick up the bones on the ground. Lone Moon frowned, grabbed the squirrel demon and dragged it out. Let's go out first. No, I want to save Little Flower. The squirrel struggled, but was still dragged out. Let me go. There's no living person inside. Lone Moon glared at it inside. How long has your Little Flower been caught? The squirrel was stunned, and then counted with his fingers. 4, 5, 6. I don't know, but the Tiger King promised to let me exchange for her. She must. She's long dead. Looking at the situation in the cave, the tiger demon wouldn't leave anyone alive at all. It was just lying to this squirrel. Chapter 509. No, it can't be. The color drained from the squirrel's face, and the tears in his eyes began to gather again. The tiger demon clearly said that it can be changed back before the sun rises. Clearly. Wah. Ugh. Seeing that it was about to start howling again, Lone Moon was quick to react, and stuffed a fruit into its mouth. Demons were good demons, but they were too noisy. I say, little mushroom, you. He was just about to say a few words when he suddenly felt a burst of demonic aura, coming from the left side of the forest. It's in the direction of the town. I Ching reminded. Go back. Lone Moon picked up the squirrel demon, turned around and flew in that direction on his sword. Before he got close, he heard a loud bang, and there were faint cries of horror. Outside the town wall, a huge tiger suddenly appeared, and it looked like it was already at the 5th level. Its original body was about the same height as the city wall, and at this time, It was using its front claws to attack the thick city wall. For a moment, large pieces of bricks fell to the ground, and it looked like the city wall was about to collapse. Tiger! Tiger! Tiger King! The squirrel recognized it at one glance, and his body trembled. Lone Moon's eyes darkened, saving them the trouble of looking for it. Chef, it's time to advertise. I Ching nodded and was about to summon his sword. Forget it, I'll go. Lone Moon suddenly changed his mind and casually threw the squirrel to him. If you go, you'll definitely be finished with one sword again. Advertisements and whatnot, of course the more gorgeous, high-end and shocking the better. At this time, the tiger demon below had already collapsed the city wall, and the people in the town were fleeing in panic. The tiger demon roared, leaped up, and opened its bloody mouth. Just as it was about to bite towards the crowd, suddenly, a golden light flashed. A translucent barrier suddenly appeared in front of everyone, and the light of the array formation shone brightly. Countless golden array formations appeared in the sky, and in an instant, the entire town was reflected in a golden light. That barrier grew bigger and bigger, and directly enveloped the entire town inside. Tiger demon, don't you dare do evil. A deep male voice seemed to come from the sky and instantly spread to everyone's ears. Seeing that the tiger demon was unable to cross the barrier, no matter how hard it tried, the panicking crowd instantly quietened down. They all looked up into the sky in shock, only to see a man in fluttering white clothes standing in the air. His body was surrounded by white light, making it hard for people to see him clearly, but they could not help but feel a sense of unreachable distance. I Ching and Shenning quietly snuck into the crowd, watching Father Neo's grand show-off. Lone Moon changed his hand and conjured another seal. Suddenly, another array appeared and fell directly on the tiger demon below. A huge pressure immediately pressed down on the demon below. The tiger demon could not stand steadily and was about to be suppressed to the ground. Seeming to understand that it was no match for the tiger demon, it turned around and wanted to escape. However, the person in the sky raised his hand, and instantly, a row of swords fell from the sky, directly cutting off its escape route. One of the swords even pierced its front paw, causing the tiger demon to immediately let out a cry. But that ethereal voice sounded again. Tiger demon, your body is full of blood and resentment. You have violated the taboo of cannibalism and brought disaster to the people. Your sin is unforgivable. Today, I will help the people of this town and get rid of you, the scourge. With that said, he conjured a seal with one hand and instantly, a huge sword appeared in the air, shining with golden light and blinding. The tiger demon wanted to escape in fear, but it was suppressed by the sword chi, and could not move. It could only watch as the huge sword fell directly, and the whole demon tiger instantly stopped breathing. The townspeople were all stunned. After a long while, they reacted with a face full of excitement. That monster is dead. That monster is really dead. That's great. We don't have to escape anymore. He saved us and killed that monster. That person can actually fly, and can even kill such a huge monster. Yes, and those just now. What exactly is he? Could it be that he is? The crowd pondered for a long time, but did not come up with anything. Shen Ying, who was watching from the side, added casually, he's an immortal. The crowd was stunned, and suddenly came to a realization. They cheered even more excitedly. Yes, it's an immortal. It's definitely an immortal. An immortal has come to save us. Only immortals can use this kind of immortal spell. He is definitely an immortal. An immortal has descended to the world to help us subdue the monster. The crowd became more and more excited as they spoke, and some people were already bowing to Lone Moon. Only then did Shen Ying continue to eat her fruit. Yes, the importance of a supporting role. Seeing that the effect of the advertisement was almost over, Lone Moon then removed the array around them, leaving only a few spells to illuminate and create the atmosphere. Only then did he continue to maintain his unfathomable business expression, turn back to look at the townspeople on the ground, and still use that ethereal voice to speak. You don't have to bow to me. I just happened to pass by this place. Perhaps I have fate with this place, so let me give you one more piece of advice. He sighed and continued. Now that demons are running amok in the human world, those who are fated can go to the Eastern Immortal Mountain to seek the path of immortals, learn the art of subduing demons, and solve this disaster. With that said, without another word, he turned and flew toward the east on his sword. In a short while, he disappeared without a trace. Even the dreamy light in the sky slowly dissipated, leaving only a huge tiger carcass at the city gate. Everyone looked at each other and began to recall the words of the immortal before he left, to seek the path of immortals, to learn the art of subduing demons. Did the immortal mean that mortals could also learn immortal spells? Everyone's eyes lit up, their faces full of eagerness. 100 miles away. Can we go home and cook? Shenning laid lazily on a rock at the side, not wanting to move anymore. Of course not. Lone Moon refused. Huh? Shenning was stunned. Didn't they finish the advertisement? How can we just advertise once? There's no Weibo here. The transmission of information is slow. We have to go to a few more places. And let everyone know that we can cultivate. He turned to look at the two people who had only done the supporting role from the beginning to the end. I'll go alone. You guys can't help anyway. With that said, he tore the person from the rock and threw her to Chef. You guys go to the place you chose last time, plant the Immortal Meridian, and build the sect first. Planting the Immortal Meridian is no problem. I Ching frowned and answered. But the house? Who's going to build it? Lone Moon was stunned. Only then did he think of this question. I Ching frowned and said casually, we already had the places we used to live. The only invincible sect that was built by Rabbit. Now there's no rabbit here. With that said, 3 pairs of eyes immediately turned to look at a certain little squirrel selling mushrooms. The squirrel trembled and immediately shook his head like a drum. I only know how to plant mushrooms. What's the use of you? This was the most useless little animal they had ever picked up. Chapter 510. Perhaps the disdain in their eyes was too obvious. The squirrel could only add weakly. How about, I build a nest for you? He still knew how to build a nest. A very big one. The 3. Who wants to live in your nest? Forget it. Lone Moon took out a white box and handed it to I Ching. This is a cave abode that Fatty made when he was practicing last time. It's not big, just make do with it. He took out a summoning amulet and asked Fatty to come over as soon as possible. I'll meet up with you in a few days. Also, he pointed at the squirrel demon. Find a place to release this mushroom. He explained everything, focusing on Shenning, before summoning his flying sword. Just as he was about to fly away, he gritted his teeth and turned back, taking out the snacks he collected from Shenning last time, and stuffed them back. Stay here and eat your fruits, don't lose them again. Shen Ying's eyes lit up. Yes, Father Neo, no problem, Father Neo. Lone Moon then turned and flew away with the expression of a worried old father. He was tired to death for his troublesome children. For mortals who had not come into contact with immortal cultivation, it was quite easy to deceive. No, it was quite easy to advertise. Lone Moon only set up a few small spells everywhere, and subdued a few troublesome demon beasts along the way. Slowly, the rumor that there was an immortal mountain in the east, and fated people could ascend it to seek immortality spread throughout the entire human continent. And many people had already begun to set out to find the immortal mountain. Lone Moon also distributed a few maps at the right time, and spread rumors that the younger one was, the easier it was to cultivate and so on. There would definitely be a lot of people going there. The advertising here was very successful. But when he thought of those 2 troublesome prodigals, his heart was in a mess, and he felt that it would be abnormal if they did not cause some trouble. So when he finished his work and hurried back, he saw that Spirit Peak floating high in the air, surrounded by immortal chi, and especially that magnificent building on top of the Spirit Peak. He could not react for a moment. This was Chef and Xinying's doing? He subconsciously released his divine sense and scanned the place. He found that it was not transformed from an artifact. It was a real palace, and there was a large group of them. He could still vaguely sense the aura of the immortal meridian flowing on the ground. But the peak was filled with spiritual energy, and even the conversion of the spiritual energy had been completed. The family's prodigal son had suddenly become so obedient and capable. The old father was a little confused. He turned around and walked towards the back of the hall. Father Neo, you're back. Shening waved a hand in greeting, then quickly swept the food into her own bowl. The corner of Longman's mouth twitched. He sat down at the table and looked around. Chef, what's with these palaces? Who did you capture to build it? I didn't capture anyone. I Ching answered seriously. It was all built by Master Shening. Longmun narrowed his eyes suspiciously. I'd believe you if you said she would demolish a house. Building a house, hee. Wait. He immediately stood up and carefully looked around. He was too shocked just now to notice. Why do I feel that the layout of this house is a little familiar? Why does it look a little like Hongming's? You guessed right. It's Purple Night Palace. I Ching answered seriously. You pulled Hongming over and made him build one just like that? That's not it. I Ching shook his head. Master said that building a house is too troublesome. Anyway, Hongming has ready-made houses. We can just move it over and use it. So, the corner of Longman's mouth twitched. You moved the entire Purple Night Palace over? That's the fastest way. Can I ask, what's left over there? I Ching thought about it. There's still the square in front. After all, there were still many divine beings who had not woken up from their meditation. Longmun was silent for a while, then took a deep breath. Chef. He clenched his fists by his side and patted Longmun's shoulder. With a serious face, he raised his thumb. Good job. I Ching. Shening. After teaching for so many years, these two finally had some of her old father's true teachings. She was a little gratified. On the other side of the sea, Purple Night Palace was left with a bare mountain top. Hong Bankrupt Meng stood on the empty square, feeling a sense of desolation in his heart. Brother Hong, do you want a carrot to calm you down? Rabbit could not bear to leave, so he handed a carrot over. Hong Meng, one may not be enough. It's all right, I'll give you a basket. With the housing problem solved, Longmun had a peaceful meal. He was just about to ask about the spirit chi here. After all, Purple Night Palace was originally Hongming's palace. This place should be filled with God power. Cultivators definitely could not withstand God power directly. Even immortal chi was not very suitable at the beginning of cultivation. Actually, spirit meridians were the best. But this plane had just been opened. Immortal meridians and God power were everywhere. Spirit meridians, which were relatively rare, were hard to find. He was still thinking about what kind of array to set up after planting the immortal meridians to convert the immortal chi into spirit chi. He did not expect Chef and the others to solve this problem in advance. Just as he was about to speak, Fatty walked in. Seeing him, he was instantly delighted. Master, you're back. He walked over quickly. Behind him, a small figure carrying a basket followed. Longmun nodded. He glanced at the figure beside him and turned back to look at Chef. Why is this mushroom still here? Didn't you release it? The one beside Fatty was that squirrel demon. I'm very useful. Mushroom stepped forward and hurriedly said, I know how to grow mushrooms. Who wants your mushrooms? Longmun frowned. Master, the mushrooms it grows have the effect of converting immortal chi. Fatty hurriedly explained. The spirit chi here is all converted by the mushrooms it grows. It can convert immortal chi. Longmun was shocked. He turned to look. There were indeed a few mushrooms growing in the courtyard. One look, and he knew that they were created by sorcery. They were emitting faint spirit chi. What's going on? How could demons have such an ability, unless it's not an ordinary demon? I Ching said in a low voice. Longmun scanned the squirrel demon from head to toe. He raised his hand and conjured a seal. The squirrel's body shook and instantly changed back to its original form. The basket in its hands fell with a thud. It happened to cover its body and its big tail. The squirrel began to struggle in a panic. Fatty hurriedly opened the basket and rescued it. It seemed to be scared out of its wits. It quickly climbed onto Fatty's shoulder and hid behind him. It stared at Longmun with a pair of big teary eyes. It was the size of a palm. It was indeed a squirrel. But why could it create a mushroom that could convert spirit chi? Fatty, bring it over. He wasn't Shening. Was it so scary? Don't be afraid. Fatty comforted the squirrel demon. He then carried the squirrel down from his shoulder and brought it over. Chapter 511. Lone Moon adjusted a bit of immortal chi and reached out to touch the squirrel's forehead. After checking its body, his eyes widened. Spirit chi. This squirrel demon's meridians were filled with spirit chi, and there was no demonic chi at all. He had thought that it was a little demon that had just gained sentience, which was why its demonic chi was so weak. It turned out that it did not have any at all, and the aura of the wood spirit chi was vaguely familiar, just like a carrot. You're a vegetation spirit? Lone Moon was shocked. Only vegetation spirits could communicate with all plants, so it was not strange that they could create mushrooms that could convert spirit chi. But he immediately denied it. No, I'm really a squirrel. Didn't it eat a big pine nut? Shunning suddenly said. Lone Moon paused and then reacted. You've eaten vegetation spirits before? Vegetation spirits actually did not have a specific shape. After gaining sentience, they could change their shape according to their own will, like a carrot. It was only because Shunning kept calling it a carrot that it grew more and more like a carrot. The squirrel said that the big pine nut that little flower gave it to eat should be a vegetation spirit that had not yet gained sentience. That was why it became a demon and had wood spirit chi all over its body. Its level was still low now, so it could only plant all kinds of mushrooms. When its cultivation level increased, as long as it had seeds, it would probably be able to plant all kinds of immortal herbs. Who knew how many cultivators would fight over it? Master. Fatty could not help but speak up. It's a little demon with nowhere to go. If it goes out, it will probably become food for other demons. Let it stay here. I will take care of it. Lone Moon glanced at Fatty. Was he thinking about his own situation? So he sympathized with the squirrel? Suddenly he wanted to ask, do you still remember the rabbit at Daming Lake? If you want to stay, then stay. This would save him the trouble of setting up a new array and converting spirit chi. Fatty was instantly delighted. Just as he was about to say something, Lone Moon changed the topic and added, the fee for taking care of it will be deducted from your account book. Fatty tripped and almost fell. He felt that the burden debt on his shoulders had become even heavier. But Lone Moon sat back down. Don't think that just because you call me master, you don't have to pay your debt. He was not willing to take care of just anyone. Shunning and I Ching. Calmly munching on the food, the immediate family expressed that they had nothing to fear. A few months later, on the open space on the east side of the continent, a dense crowd had gathered. Most of them were children around the age of 10, but there were also youths in their 20s or 30s. Some wore gorgeous clothes while others were in tatters. They seemed to be people from all walks of life, and they were all looking around excitedly. These were the first batch of people who had heard the news and gathered here to try their luck. Recently, a rumor began to spread in various countries in the human world. At noon today, a celestial mountain would appear and accept disciples. Those who were fated could enter the mountain to cultivate. They would have the opportunity to learn extraordinary skills and might even ascend to become an immortal. Although this rumor came from a strange place, there were still many people who came from afar to witness this so-called celestial mountain. However, when they arrived, they didn't see a celestial mountain. They only saw a strange stone by the sea. On it were the words Celestial Ascension. The words glowed with a faint golden light. It didn't seem ordinary. What immortal mountain? It's just a piece of rock. Some of the people who had come from afar couldn't help but feel disappointed when they saw that. Yeah, where are the immortals? They made us come all the way here. Why don't we come out to take a look? It seems that all the things about cultivating to become an immortal are lies. Although there were many people here, most of them didn't really come to become immortals. Instead, they were here to watch the show. In the end, they didn't see the show and only saw a piece of rock. It was inevitable that they lost their patience and wanted to leave. However, there were still more people who stayed, including some who had actually seen the immortals. You can't say that. Didn't you say it was noon? It's not time yet. Yeah, I've seen the immortals with my own eyes. The celestial mountain must be here. That's right. Maybe it's because we are mortals and haven't seen it at all. Everyone thought about it and agreed. Since they were already here, they didn't mind waiting for a few more days. The sun rose higher and higher, and the surrounding temperature also became hotter. The crowd that had gathered decreased a little. Soon it was noon. Apart from that piece of rock, there was still no celestial mountain, let alone immortals. Everyone revealed a disappointed look. It's a lie indeed. Someone couldn't help but curse. I don't know who spread the rumor. I must find the culprit and beat him up. With that said, he lifted his leg and kicked the strange rock beside him. But there was a loud bang, and the rock instantly emitted a blinding light that shot into the sky. The person was so scared that he fell to the ground. The restless crowd suddenly quietened down. They widened their eyes and looked at the scene in front of them in shock. They saw the golden light on the rock suddenly spread to both sides. As if a layer of curtain had been lifted, the sky suddenly shook. The coastline, which was originally a straight line, suddenly changed. Suddenly mountains appeared, hidden in the clouds. And above the mountains, a huge floating peak hung high in the sky. The peak was surrounded by clouds and mist, and the ground was bathed in sunlight. One could faintly see a magnificent palace on the top of the mountain. Immortal! Immortal mountain! It's an immortal mountain! Someone exclaimed loudly. Everyone stared at the mountain floating in the sky. There was no longer any doubt in their hearts. So there really was an immortal mountain. At this time in the main hall, who placed the spirit testing stone under the mountain? Lone Moon turned and asked. The advertisement had almost gone to waste. It's me. Fatty raised his hand weakly. Why did you block the entrance with the spirit testing stone? He had no choice but to open the protective mountain array. Did he know how many spirit stones it would cost to open it? Master, didn't you say that we need to select disciples with spirit roots before we can go up the mountain? Without spirit roots, one could not cultivate. Fatty lowered his head weakly. In the past, all the immortal sects did this. Lone Moon stiffened. Forget it. Put down the immortal ascension ladder. He silently made another note on Fatty's debt. Yes, master. Fatty stood up and took out a stone Dharma artifact. He was just about to throw it out. Wait, Lone Moon added. Add another spirit selection array. That way, people without spirit roots could not go up, and there would be no need for the spirit testing stone. Fatty nodded and added an array on the Dharma artifact. He activated his spirit chi and threw it out. At the seaside below, a white path suddenly appeared in front of everyone's eyes. It meandered towards the mountain in front of them. It's the path to the immortal mountain, someone exclaimed. Only then did everyone seem to wake up from their stupor and scramble to run towards the road. But the moment they stepped on the path, some people ran further and further away, while some people whizzed back to where they started. No matter how hard they tried, they could not pass. Chapter 5:12. Everyone tried many times to no avail. Only then did they remember that the rumors said that only fated people could enter the immortal mountain. They had no choice but to retreat in disappointment. But there were very few people like that. Most of these people had spirit roots. The so-called immortal ascension ladder was actually used by the small world that Fatty was in to test and select new disciples. Different from the three azure realms, the sacred arrival world that Fatty was in had very few people without spirit roots. Immortal sects had a lot of resources and were naturally very strict about taking in disciples. Not only did they have to look at spirit roots, they also had to look at potential enlightenment and other aspects. On the immortal ascension ladder, there were many sorcery that could affect one's state of mind. The clearer one's mind and the more determined one was, the faster they could reach the top. Indeed, the people who had originally rushed up the immortal ascension ladder, at the same time, had already created quite a distance between them. The people who had originally been in front were all young and strong men. In less than 7 minutes, most of them had fallen behind. Moreover, most of them were panting and sweating profusely. But the women and children who had fallen behind had caught up. Especially the children who were under 10 years old. They did not look tired at all. Instead, they looked back curiously at the seemingly breathless adults. After a quarter of an hour, apart from the 5 or 6 adults who were in front, the rest were all children. How much longer do we need before we can come up? Lomoon asked casually. Fatty glanced at him and said, We might need another hour. That wouldn't take too long. It should be over soon. Where are those two rascals? He turned around and realized that Chef and Shuning were not in the main hall. Master, have you forgotten? Fatty reminded him. It's noon now. They went to have lunch. The corner of Lomoon's mouth twitched. Motherf **, these two rascals. Father Neo, it's time to eat. Just as he was thinking, Chef's voice sounded in his ear. Oh, there's no need for Fatty. I didn't cook for him. All right. Seeing that they still knew to call him, he would not deduct their food expenses this time. Fatty. Why did he send a voice transmission as well? He did not want to know. The distance between the people on the immortal ascension ladder increased. The people at the back looked more and more pathetic. Some of them could not even stand. Many people chose to give up and turn back. However, the moment they turned around, the immortal ascension ladder automatically teleported them back to the seaside. Hence, there were fewer and fewer people on the immortal ascension ladder. This was also Lomoon's initial thought. The main purpose of the people he chose this time was not entirely to establish a sect, take in disciples, and teach them immortal cultivation. Instead, it was to pass down cultivation techniques to the human world. Therefore, not only did these people have to learn it, but they also had to pass it on to more people in the future. This allowed the human race to have the ability to protect themselves in the primordial world, where the heavenly Tao had yet to be completely established. In modern terms, it was to let some people get rich first, and then lead everyone to get rich together. Therefore, there was no need to recruit too many disciples, just a few would do. However, they were all going to become grandmasters in the future, so the selection process was naturally very strict. 15 minutes later, there were only a few figures left on the immortal ascension stairs. Most of the children were around 10 years old, and upon closer inspection, there were 20 to 30 of them. Next were young women, and there were only about 10 of them left. The ones with the least were the strong men, who had been the fastest at the start. What was amazing was that there were 2 older men among them. However, they were not at the bottom of the group. Instead, they were walking behind the 2 children. As for the 2 children, they were walking at the back of the group. They were also the most exhausted. They were a boy and a girl. Among all the children, only the little boy was panting and sweating profusely. It was not because of the array formation, but because he was carrying a little girl on his back. The 2 of them were about the same age. Naturally, it was difficult for him to carry her, but he still persisted. The only person left in the main hall, Fatty, looked at the 2 of them curiously. The little girl's face was pale and sickly. One look, and he could tell that there was something wrong with her body. From time to time, she would take out a small handkerchief to wipe the boy's sweat. The 2 of them seemed to be related by blood. They were probably siblings. Perhaps because the 2 of them were so special, Fatty could not help but look at them. They were still a distance away from the peak. The immortal ascension stairs would only be open for 2 hours. If they were lucky, they should be able to reach the top. At this moment, the person walking at the front was almost at the top. Fatty thought of the squirrel demon, who was still planting mushrooms at the entrance. With a turn of his body, he teleported to the entrance of the mountain. Indeed, a child who was not even 10 years old, with a pink face, had already appeared at the entrance of the mountain. The squirrel demon, who was diligently planting mushrooms at the side, jumped in fright. The spirit chi in his body surged out uncontrollably. With a few spluttering sounds, the ground around him was instantly filled with mushrooms. Monster! The child was shocked. Perhaps because he was too young, he did not know fear. Instead, he pointed at the squirrel demon and shouted. He even wanted to reach out to grab the squirrel demon's huge tail. Mushroom! Fatty called out and walked over. Great! Great immortal! The squirrel demon threw the mushroom, that had fallen to the ground, and hid behind Fatty. He looked at the child at the entrance of the mountain with an aggrieved expression. The child was stunned. Perhaps he recognized Fatty's identity. He immediately bowed respectfully. Chisu Nation's Lu Zheng greets immortal elder. His eyes were still looking curiously at the squirrel demon beside him. Fatty nodded and pointed to the empty space beside him. You are the first person to reach the top. Wait at the side first. When the people behind you come up, I will bring you to see Master. Yes, Immortal Elder. Lu Zheng obediently stood to the side. He was dressed well. His family must be wealthy. That was why he was so polite at such a young age. But he was still a child. He could not help but look around curiously. Fatty did not wait long at the mountain gate. The people behind him had already arrived. The first few were all children. When the fifth person arrived, a woman appeared. Then a young man and an elder came up. It was almost time. The stairway was starting to disappear from the bottom. Those who were still on it were immediately transported back. Just as the stairway was about to disappear completely, the boy carrying the little girl finally arrived. When he saw the mountain gate, his expression lit up. He seemed to use all his strength as he quickened his pace, wanting to climb the last few steps. Suddenly, a tall man rushed out from behind him. At this point, the stairway was about to disappear. He also quickened his pace. As if annoyed that the child was blocking his way, he pushed the person in front of him aside. Out of the way. Then at the last moment, he reached the top of the mountain. When he looked up, he saw Fatty surrounded by immortal chi. Before he had time to rejoice, his figure flashed, and he was transported back to the seaside. Chapter 513. Fatty furrowed his brows. He could have come up with the two kids, but he had taken the unnecessary step of pushing someone else. If mortals fell from here, they would be smashed to pieces. But the immortal ascension ladder could not harm anyone, or they would be teleported out. People with such evil intentions could not be accepted into the sect. He immediately cast a spell to summon the children who had fallen off the immortal staircase back to the immortal staircase. He retreated a certain distance, and sent a sliver of immortal chi to the immortal ascension ladder, delaying the disappearance of the ladder. After all, it was pardonable. He would give them another chance, and see what choice they would make. Unexpectedly, the child only hesitated for a moment, before continuing to walk towards the mountain gate. His eyes were resolute, and he did not let go of the little girl on his back. He really managed to reach the top of the ladder before it disappeared again. Fatty kept the immortal ascension ladder, and closed the protective array outside. The people on the beach watched as the entire immortal mountain started to disappear. Fatty turned to look at the only 9 people who had climbed up. Since you can reach the immortal door, you are fated to be immortals. Follow me now. I will bring you to meet the immortal elders, who will be teaching you immortal arts in the future. Teaching us immortal arts? Then they will be our masters in the future? Someone said excitedly. Fatty paused and thought about the 3 people in the back hall. Lone Moon had not acknowledged him as his disciple all these years. I Ching had never accepted disciples, and Lady Shun. Forget it, he replied. You should call yourselves exalted masters. They will teach you cultivation, but they will not accept you as disciples. Everyone was a little disappointed, but they still followed him to the back hall, their eyes filled with anticipation. Considering the image of the sect, Fatty calculated the time, and even specially brought everyone around in a big circle, before arriving at the rear hall. As expected, they had already finished eating. From afar, they could see 3 people sitting in the courtyard. There were 2 men and 1 woman. The man on the left was drinking tea, while the woman in the middle was leaning on a chair, chewing on a fruit. The other man was pouring tea for her. Apart from the woman in the middle, the other 2 were surrounded by immortal chi. Master. Fatty looked at Lone Moon and said, the selected disciples have arrived. There are 9 in total. 9. Lone Moon paused. What a coincidence. The first batch of Invincible Sect disciples also consisted of 9 people. He scanned the group. Apart from 3 adults, the rest were all little radishes. Greetings, Immortal Elder. The 3 adults cupped their fists and bowed. The other children followed suit and bowed as well. Yes. Lone Moon nodded. He put down the cup of tea in his hand and stood up. Since you have passed the test of the Immortal Ascension Ladder, you have officially entered the Immortal Sect. Everyone's eyes lit up. They were even more excited than before. Nowadays, demons are running amok in the human world, And there are even more dangers in the outside world that you can't even imagine. I'm teaching you the art of cultivation because I want to wait until you've mastered it before you can establish your own sects and raise even more cultivators to resolve the dangers in the world. Lone Moon spoke his mind directly. That's why I hope that all of you will work hard in your cultivation in the future. Only then will you have the ability to teach others. Yes, Immortal Elder. They replied in unison. Yes. Lone Moon nodded and introduced himself. My Taoist name is Lone Moon. That's I Ching. The one beside him is not important. He would not remember them anyway. Shenning. Son of AB * teach. From tomorrow onwards, we will officially teach you the art of cultivation. Today, all of you can first. Lone Moon was just about to make arrangements for their accommodations. Immortal Elder. A child on the right suddenly cried out. With a plop, he knelt down in front of Lone Moon. Immortal Elder, please save my younger sister. As long as you can save her, I will do anything you want me to do. With that said, he began to kowtow to Lone Moon. Beside him was a little girl who seemed to be in a daze. She seemed to be unable to stand on her own, and was being supported by an adult girl beside her. Lone Moon looked questioningly at Fatty. Fatty hesitated for a moment. It was obvious that he did not know what was going on, but he added, "This child's younger sister seems to be ill." He carried her on his back all the way up the immortal ascension ladder. Oh, Lone Moon looked at the child on the ground. Tell me what exactly happened, replying Immortal Elder. The little boy replied immediately. A few years ago, my younger sister was accidentally bitten by a monster. Since then she has been unable to walk. The villagers all said that she was an inauspicious person and would bring disaster. They chased us out. Immortal Elder, you are an immortal. You must have a way to cure my younger sister, right? I beg you, please save her? You climbed the immortal ascension ladder just to cure her. Lone Moon glanced at the little girl and fixed his gaze on her legs. He could tell at one glance that her legs had been invaded by demonic aura. That was why they had become like this. However, it was not very serious. Yes, the little boy nodded vigorously. Then what if I let you choose between cultivation and curing your younger sister? Lone Moon asked. The little boy was stunned. He did not expect Lone Moon to say this. He turned back to look at the little girl behind him and gritted his teeth. I choose my younger sister. Immortal Elder, please grant me my wish. Lone Moon nodded. This was a good child. He stood up and walked to the little girl's side. He lifted his hand and dispelled the demonic aura on her legs. The little girl hesitated. Suddenly, she felt that her legs had regained strength. She subconsciously stood up straight. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Brother, I can walk now. The little boy was ecstatic. He immediately pulled his younger sister to kneel down with him. Thank you, Immortal Elder. Thank you, Immortal Elder. There's no need. Lone Moon reached out to support him. You're so young. For you to go so far for your loved ones, you can be considered. He had wanted to praise him, but he suddenly felt something strange in his hand. Alarmed, he pulled the little boy up and examined him carefully. He even released a wisp of sword chi. Indeed, in a short while, he felt a tiny trace of sword chi rebound from his body. Holy shit, an innate sword embodiment. He actually had the same constitution as Chef. This was an innate sword cultivator's constitution, the kind that would not go astray. He immediately pulled the little boy back and said seriously, I've decided to take you in as my disciple. Come call me master. With that said, he shot a look at the master and disciple behind him. Shenning. I Ching. Fatty. Didn't you say you wouldn't take in disciples? Fatty felt bitter. Lone Moon did not expect that he would meet an innate sword embodiment just by doing some advertisement. Thinking of the teaching history that he had been through, his stomach filled with bitterness. Forget about the body cultivators in the sect. The only one who taught diligently Fatty was an innate sword cultivator. This innate sword embodiment was practically here to save his worldview. Lone Moon finally saw some light at the end of the road for sword cultivators. Chapter 514. Lone Moon immediately accepted a disciple. and insisted that he would completely isolate Xin Ying's negative influence. He taught her step by step. Even Chef was isolated. He didn't believe he couldn't teach a pure sword cultivator. Lone Moon even specially gave him a Taoist name, Jianxing. It meant the prosperity of the sword cultivator business. Anyway, these people were going to go out in the future and establish their own sections. By then he would establish a sword cultivator sect. Just thinking about it made him happy. So he taught even more energetically, from basic swordsmanship to guiding qi into the body. He was unprecedentedly serious. And Jianxing was indeed smart. Among everyone, he was the first to succeed in guiding qi into the body. As for the others, the introductory teaching was basically handed over to Fatty. Lone Moon only occasionally gave them a few pointers. In addition, apart from being handicapped in swordsmanship, Fatty was an all-rounder in all other aspects. There was basically no problem teaching him. Among them, none of them had natural sword embodiment. Most of them were average, including Jianxing's sister, Jilin, who had 4 spirit roots. But fortunately, their comprehension was acceptable. Although they couldn't cultivate to become mighty figures, they could still establish their own sects and be teachers of Tao. In addition, this plane had just been born. It was a good time for cultivation. As long as they didn't slack off, it wasn't very difficult to become immortal. Fatty was obviously much more reliable than Lone Moon, who had fallen into the sword cultivator syndrome. After observing everyone's preferences for a few months, he began to teach them in a targeted manner. Only when there was a problem with swordsmanship would he ask I Ching to come out and help out. So everyone in the sect threw themselves into the business of cultivation, except Xinying. As a 10,000-year-old mascot, Xin Ying's contribution to the sect had always been only one mission, watering. In the past, with Radish around, she had to go to the back mountain to water it every day. Now that Radish was replaced by mushrooms, she had to water the mushrooms planted by the squirrel demon every day. Perhaps because of a fruit from before, the squirrel had a good impression of Xinying. In addition, the immortal meridian on this mountain happened to be planted in the back mountain. The squirrel had to plant mushrooms near the immortal meridian every day to completely convert the immortal qi into spirit qi. The general process was for the squirrel to plant in front, and she to water in the back. After planting, she nibbled on her fruit, and he ate his pine nuts. It was a tacit understanding. Greetings, immortals. While the two of them were eating, a young girl's voice came from behind them. They turned around and saw a girl in white bowing to them. She was a little short, and looked to be around 10 years old. Her face was very delicate, and it could be seen that she would grow up to be graceful. Mushroom was familiar with Fatty and recognized that this girl was the disciple that Lone Moon had taken in, Jianxing's younger sister. Her name seemed to be Jilin. He immediately jumped down from the rock and shook his hand in a panic. I'm not some exalted immortal. You can just call me Mushroom. It had just gained sentience not long ago, and had never had a name. Xinying called it Mushroom, so it decided to call it Mushroom. Sister Mushroom. Jilin readily accepted her advice and called out sweetly. She turned to look at the person on the rock and asked, How should I address this sister? Xinying paused for a moment before replying, Xinying. Sister Shen. Jilin called out as well. She looked at her a few times curiously before saying, Exalted Guru Hui asked me to come to the back of the mountain to pick some spirit herbs for refining elixirs. I wonder if the two of you can. Go ahead, go ahead. Mushroom waved her hand generously. Since Huizhe ordered you to, just go ahead and pick. Thank you, sisters. Her smile became even sweeter. She nodded at the two of them and turned to walk towards the spirit herbs on the ground. She began to pick the spirit herbs she needed seriously. Mushroom could not help but look at her curiously. She was a demon, and most humans were afraid of demons. So even though Fatty had explained that she was just a good demon who had just started cultivating, these disciples would still subconsciously stay away from her. So she could only follow Xinying to plant mushrooms. Jilin was the first among the 9 to take the initiative to talk to her. She could not help but feel a little happy, and looked at her a few more times. But she realized that the more she picked, the closer she was to the edge of the immortal meridian. Mushroom panicked and immediately reminded her, Wait. You can't pick those mushrooms. Jilin paused and then retracted her hand. She turned back and smiled. Sorry, Sister Mushroom. I thought they were spirit herbs too. It's all right. Mushroom did not mind. Shening, who was at the side, jumped down from the rock and dusted her butt. I'm done watering them. Mushroom, I'm going back to eat. Oh, okay. Mushroom nodded and smiled at Jilin again before following her. I'm going to look for Huize too. Goodbye, sisters. Jilin also waved at Mushroom politely, but her gaze landed on Shening at the side again. They did not know before they started cultivating. They thought that she was a great immortal guru like the other three, but after they guided the qi into her body, they realized that this Shening did not have any immortal qi. However, the high masters had a very special attitude towards her, especially Guru I Ching, who would occasionally come to give them pointers. He was almost inseparable from her. So they became even more curious. But she did not seem to like to talk much. Jilin took a closer look. Something flashed in her eyes. Then she turned back and continued to pick the spirit herbs. Perhaps because he was addicted to teaching disciples, Lone Moon did not come to the rear hall to fight for food with Shening recently. Without the control of the elders, Shening completely let herself go. She finally lived a few years of eating and sleeping, eating and drinking without anyone caring about her. And the 9 disciples who accompanied her as immortal cultivators also improved very quickly in their cultivation. In just a few years, they were almost at foundation establishment. Jianxing even reached the late stage of foundation establishment. He was just one step away from core formation. Lone Moon estimated the time. It was time for them to go out and gain some practical experience. But, me? Shening paused. Yes, you and Fatty bring them there together. Lone Moon said seriously. Why? Why her? There are 2 more races fighting on the divine races side. And it's near Purple Night Palace. Lone Moon frowned. There are a bunch of people who have not woken up yet. Hong Meng called us back urgently to catch them and bring them back for lessons. Chef was in charge of catching, he was in charge of teaching. Oh, the place I chose for training happens to be near the segregated area by the sea. Although with Fatty's cultivation, there is no danger. But after all, the rules of this plane have not been formed yet. And these disciples are going out for the first time. You go just in case. Chapter 5:15. Lone Moon continued. Don't worry, we'll be back in no time. Anyway, you just have to follow along. Unless it's absolutely necessary, there's Fatty to take care of everything else. Sigh, so troublesome. Troublesome my ass. You're a manager after all. Can't you have some self-awareness of your position? Lone Moon stuffed a bag into her hands. Here. This is the food chef prepared for you for these few days. Let's go quickly. With that said, without waiting for Chef who was washing the vegetables to return, he pushed Shening onto the departing pirate ship. Oh no, the spirit ship. Shening. Miss Shen. Fatty immediately waved at her. Perhaps because she was too much of a homebody. The 9 disciples in the sect only saw her once on the day they entered the sect, so they all turned to look at her curiously. The group of children back then had all grown up into young men and women. Shening lifted the bag in her hands. It seemed to be quite heavy, before walking towards Fatty. The place Lone Moon chose, to be precise, was outside the isolation zone of the human race, on a huge island. There were spirit herbs everywhere, and no one had set foot on it for a long time. In addition, there were all kinds of demon beasts that had not developed intelligence, and all kinds of sounds could be heard from afar. It was indeed a good place for training. Fatty steered the spirit ship to land on a flat piece of land. This was the edge of the island, and it was relatively safe. But there were also spirit herbs everywhere. The eyes of the 2 disciples who specialized in alchemy lit up. Fatty released his divine perception and scanned for a while before letting the disciples go out. Since it was their training, Fatty did not care much. He just let them decide which direction to go. The one with the highest cultivation among the 9 was Jianxing, and he was also Lone Moon's in-house disciple, so the others seemed to see him as the leader. After picking a few spirit herbs, the few of them finally decided to head towards the center of the island. Fatty and Shenning followed far behind. The island was filled with all kinds of spirit herbs and all kinds of cultivation materials. There was much more variety than in the sect. The disciples who rarely came out naturally would not let go of this opportunity, so most of the time was spent on collecting these materials. Among them, they also encountered sudden attacks from demon beasts, but they were not very powerful, and the few of them could deal with them together. Although some people were injured, they were more scared than hurt, and continued to push forward. Perhaps it was the novelty of coming out for experience for the first time. These disciples were full of energy. In just a few days, they had already traveled a long distance. However, he had to stop once a day in the morning, afternoon, and evening. And it was Fatty who forced them to stop, for no other reason than it was time for Shenning to eat. Fatty knew how punctual Shenying's mealtime was. Basically, it would not change. These disciples had already abstained from eating, so they didn't need to eat. In addition, there were only a few of them, so they naturally couldn't split up. Thus, they could only stop and wait. At the start, the disciples were busy gathering all kinds of spirit herbs and materials, so they didn't think much of it. But slowly, what needed to be harvested and what needed to be collected was more or less done. Everyone still had to stop and wait for her to finish eating every day, so they could not help but have some opinions about this. Their faces were faintly filled with dissatisfaction, especially a few of the younger ones, who looked at Shenning with hidden anger in their eyes. Shenning, on the other hand, did not react at all. It was as if she could not feel the resentment of the crowd. She continued to eat her food like a whirlwind. She even raised her head to look at Fatty, then kindly handed him a bowl of plain rice. Here. The corner of Fatty's mouth twitched. Instantly, he thought of those days where he ate plain rice. It's all right, Miss Shun. I've already succeeded in abstaining from eating. Don't tempt me. Oh. Shenning took back the rice she had just refilled and took a bite. I was just asking. So you didn't even want to give it to me? Fatty frowned. He turned back to look at the 9 disciples waiting at the side. He had taught these people for so many years, so he could naturally guess what they were thinking. Thus he explained, Master has instructed that during this experiential training, we must not disturb Miss Shin while she eats and sleeps. Especially when she sleeps. Although he did not understand why Master emphasized on sleeping, he still patiently advised. Cultivation is not something that can be achieved in a day. The main purpose of this tribulation is to train your state of mind. You must remember this. The few of them were stunned for a moment. Their expressions changed. Especially the older ones. They immediately reacted and no longer looked as impatient as before. But there were still a few who were indignant. When they entered the sect, they were not old to begin with. They had not experienced much. After these few years of cultivation, they were only in their teens. They became cultivators above mortals in one leap. Their state of mind had become too arrogant. Although they did not dare to say anything due to Longman's instructions, they still blamed Shenning for delaying their time. They continued walking like this for a few days. After stopping to eat once again, a female disciple finally could not take it anymore. She walked over with a bottle of elixirs and said with some anger, Here, this is an abstinence pill. Shenning paused and turned to look at her. There was still half a mouthful of rice in her mouth, chewing it with bulging cheeks. Ziyu. Fatty stood up angrily. He had clearly told her that this was Master's order. Exalted Master Huize. Ziyu looked at Fatty with some grievance. With this, she doesn't have to stop to eat. One abstinence pill could make one not hungry for a month. Fatty was about to reprimand her when Shenning glanced at the bottle in her hand and replied, I don't eat mylar. What mylar? The other party faltered for a moment, and immediately realized that she did not want to eat it. I'm doing this for your own good. If you eat this, you won't have to go through the trouble of stopping to eat. Z was getting angrier. Why aren't you eating it? Because it doesn't taste good. Shenning replied matter-of-factly. Z was so angry that her face turned red. She thought that she was deliberately finding fault. You're too much, you're delaying everyone's time, you. Enough. Before she could finish, Fatty directly cut her off. His usually kind face had a rare darkened, and he unknowingly released some pressure, looking at Ziyu with some anger. I've said it before. Miss Shen's 3 meals a day were personally instructed and agreed by master. It's not your place to object. Ziyu froze instantly. As if frightened by Fatty's sudden change in expression, she took a few steps back. Fatty then turned to look at the others. Also, Miss Shun's cultivation level is high and her status is even more extraordinary. Since all of you are cultivating in the sect, you shouldn't have the slightest bit of disrespect towards her. Otherwise the consequences are not something you can bear. How could he not tell that the reason why Ziyu dared to take out the abstinence pill to offend her face was actually because she saw that Shening did not have a shred of immortal qi on her, and did not abstain from eating. She thought that her cultivation level was not high, or that she was just immortal. What a joke! A mortal who could make an ancient ferocious beast cry with one slap. Who could afford to offend her? So he simply pointed it out, in case they did anything stupid in the future. Chapter 5:16. Everyone then cupped their fists and nodded, replying in unison, "Yes, exalted master." Ziyu also retreated, but there was still resentment in her eyes. Shening didn't care. She just continued to eat her meal. Then she quietly extended the time for her meal from the usual 1 hour to 2 hours. And she even took out a few plates of pastries from time to time, eating as she walked. She even specially chose those that were fragrant and crispy. Crunch, and a wave of fragrance wafted out. Crunch, and another wave of fragrance wafted out. It was so enticing that those disciples who claimed to be fasting in front couldn't help but turn back to look. There were even a few more demon beasts that appeared. Fatty, who was the closest. Fatty felt bitter, but he couldn't eat, so he silently chanted the clear heart incantation along the way. This situation lasted for a few days, until she finished all the pastries in the bag. Then she changed back to fruits. At this time, the few of them had already completely entered the depths of the forest. They even encountered 5th-level demon beasts. This was already equivalent to golden core stage demon beasts. The 9 of them were all injured to varying degrees. They didn't know if Fatty was really angered by them provoking Shening to eat several times. But he didn't attack. In the end, it was Jian Xing who had the highest cultivation who held back the demon beasts, and the few of them escaped together. This was the first time they faced such a dangerous situation. There was no longer the arrogant expression on their faces like when they first came here. Instead, there was a hint of fear. All of them had ugly expressions. After escaping danger, they chose a hidden place to rest, and began to treat the injured. The injuries they suffered this time were many times more than before. 7 of the 9 were injured. Even Jian Xing, who was in the late stages of sword establishment, had a cut on his hand, deep to the bone. Fatty hesitated for a moment, but still didn't help them. To cultivators, this bit of injury was actually nothing much. Only one of them hurt his meridians, but the situation wasn't critical. He would be fine after slowly recuperating when he returned. Plus the tribulation wasn't over yet. So he only stood far away. Shening, who was beside him, also munched on her fruit calmly. "Sister Shen, are you eating the red spirit fruit?" Suddenly, a light voice sounded. The green-robed girl among the 9 was looking at the fruit in her hand with sparkling eyes. Shening tilted her head and replied, "I guess so. Chef planted them anyway. She only cared about eating them." It is indeed the red spirit fruit. Fatty took a look and nodded in affirmation. The girl's expression became even more pleasantly surprised. Rumor has it that the red spirit fruit is a rare spirit fruit. It blooms for 100 years and bears fruit for 100 years. It can also cure hundreds of poisons, heal meridians, and strengthen divine sense. Shening took another bite and replied, "Oh." The girl froze for a moment, thinking that Shening did not understand, so she bowed respectfully and said, "Sister Shen, I wonder if you still remember me. I am Ji Lin. I met you a few years ago at the back of the mountain." "I don't remember," Shening answered directly. Ji Lin's expression stiffened, as if she had been slapped in the face, but she still maintained her kind smile and said, "Sister Shen, senior brother Chengdong is seriously injured, and his meridians are even injured. Our cultivation levels are low, so we can't heal him. Coincidentally, you have this red spirit fruit. Can you? She did not continue, and only stared at the fruit in her hand. Shenning did not reply, but took another big bite. Can I what? As if she did not hear the meaning of her words at all. Jilin's expression stiffened even more, and she could only grit her teeth and continue. Can you give this fruit in your hand to senior brother Chung Dong to heal? Oh, Shen Ying's eyes narrowed. You want my fruit? It's senior brother Chung Dong who needs it. His injuries are serious and cannot be delayed. Sister Shen, please give him a red spirit fruit on account that we are from the same sect. Jilin said worriedly. Even the people who were healing over there all looked over. Especially the injured disciple. His eyes were filled with gratitude. Shenning tilted her head, and then took out 7 to 8 red fruits from the bag. Is this it? Jilin's eyes lit up, and she nodded vigorously. Yes, this is it. With that said, she reached out to take it. Thank. Before she could finish, Shenning retracted her hand, causing her to grab empty air. Suddenly, she revealed a radiant smile at her. Haha, I'm not giving it. With that said, she even picked one up and took a bite, then put it down right in front of her, then picked up another and took a bite, then put it down again, until she had bitten all of them once. Instantly, there was only the sound of her crunching and chewing left. Jilin. Fatty. Everyone's faces darkened. You're too much. Ziyu walked over angrily, as if she could not hold it in anymore. She pointed at Shenning and said loudly, Never mind that you've been holding us back along the way. Now that Chung Dong is already so seriously injured, you're actually not even willing to give a fruit. And you're simply rotten to the core. Ziyu. Fatty, who was stunned by Shen Ying's coquettish actions, finally regained his senses. Don't be rude. I didn't say anything wrong. She seemed to be so angry that she started criticizing without a care. She's been holding us back all along, and even teasing little sister Jilin just now? No matter how high her cultivation is, she can't bully others like that. That's right. Perhaps because someone spoke up. The other disciples who were recuperating also spoke up. It's just a fruit, she clearly has so many, but she's not willing to take any out. That's right, we're from the same sect after all. Why is she so heartless? Never mind that she didn't do anything along the way. She's even been eating and making noises that disturb us. That's right, who knows? That high-level demon beast might have been lured out by the sounds of her eating. The more everyone spoke, the more agitated they became. Apart from a few older people who looked troubled and did not utter a word, only Jianxing did not speak, but his brows were also tightly knitted. Jilin, on the other hand, spoke words of persuasion with a face full of anxiety, but there was a faint hint of something else in her words. Everyone is mistaken. Big Sister Shen doesn't mean that. She's not targeting me on purpose. Hence, the more she persuaded, the more agitated everyone became, as if all the emotions that had been accumulated for many days were all unleashed. Insolence. Until Fatty could no longer hold it in, and released his suppression. Only then did everyone fall silent. One by one, they were forced to kneel down. Fatty was really angry. Where did these people get their sense of righteousness from? The fruit is Miss Shen's to begin with. It's up to her whether to give it or not. Giving it to you is a favor, not giving it is a duty. Where did you get the face to think that she must take it out to you? He swept a glance at everyone. The more he looked, the angrier he got. Moreover, this is your training. Miss Shen and I are just guides and guards. Sooner or later, you will also experience true danger. Now you can't even take this little injury. When that time comes, where are you going to find Miss Shen and force her to give you the fruit? Chapter 517. After being reprimanded by Fatty, everyone lowered their heads, but the dissatisfaction in their eyes did not fade. Fatty clearly did not have the brainwashing eloquence of Rabbit. Ziyu could not help but mutter softly, but there's no need for her to treat little sister Jilin like this. Ziyu. But she looked up directly, still looking dissatisfied. It's clearly enough for Master Huizhe to bring us alone. There's no need for her to come at all. Instead, dragging them down, You. Wei Zhe was just about to step forward. Fatty. Shenning suddenly spoke up, turning to look at him, her face completely devoid of anger from being offended by everyone. Instead, she tilted her head and said seriously, "Your teaching standards are much worse than Father Neo's? Even my popularity has dropped." The rainbow girls of Invincible Sect were much cuter. At least they were all giving her fruits, not snatching them away. Huh. Fatty faltered, not understanding what she meant. But Shunning stepped forward directly, squatting down to look at this Ziyu on the ground, supporting her head with one hand and asked, "Say, girl, do you really think that without me around, your experience will be more successful?" Being asked so seriously, Ziyu was instead stunned for a moment. A trace of guilt flashed across her eyes, but she still nodded stubbornly and said, "That's right. You all think so too." She looked at the other 8 people. Those few glanced at her, some nodded unhappily, some just kept quiet. Only 3 older ones seemed to want to say something, but moved their mouths but did not speak in the end. "All right." Shenning nodded with a good temper, even smiling at her. "Then I'll listen to you, I won't care anymore." Ziyu faltered. What did she mean, don't care anymore? Fatty also panicked for no reason. He had a bad premonition. Miss Shen? But Shenning had already stood up. Just as she was about to turn, she thought of something. "All right, let me give you a piece of advice." She turned back and added to Ziyu, "People who are stupid will die." What did she mean? Was she scolding her? Before she could think clearly, in the next moment, everyone present, including Fatty, it was obvious that something invisible had suddenly retracted from them, as if a large net that had been spread open was suddenly retracted. Immediately after, roar! A series of deafening roars came from all directions, rising and falling continuously. It was as if the entire forest had woken up. Countless auras of demonic beasts rushed over from all directions. The roars of the beasts were accompanied by a faint pressure. The 9 people spat out blood on the spot. Their faces turned pale, and their eyes widened in shock. What were those? Fatty only felt his heart thump, and his entire heart sank. This was the voice of a high-level demonic beast. No, there were also immortal, and even God-ranked ones rushing over. He finally understood. Just now, he clearly felt the aura of a high-level demonic beast beside him. However, those who jumped out and appeared in front of everyone were all low-level ones. Was this all because of Miss Shen? She had placed something around them that even he couldn't detect, so the demonic beasts didn't notice them. But now, it was gone. Therefore, all the demonic beasts had discovered them. Die, 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 die. Fatty was about to cry. With these Foundation establishment rookies, any high-level demonic beast that came would be able to kill them all with one slap. Although he wasn't afraid and could block them, he couldn't block 9 burdens. Quick! Fatty immediately set up an array to relieve the pressure on everyone. He shouted, "Run! Quickly run in the direction they came from, to the seaside." When they heard that, they didn't have time to think about what was going on. They climbed up in panic and turned to run in the direction of the entrance. Some even forgot to fly on their swords. Move together, don't split up. Fatty couldn't help but remind those who ran fast. Unfortunately, the huge fear took over. They only cared about running forward. Fatty had no choice but to carry them back and protect them all the way to the seaside. Behind them, there was a dense group of high-level demonic beasts. What was going on? 3 days later, in the main hall, the corner of Loman's mouth twitched as he glanced at the heavily injured disciples lying on the ground. Some had their meridians broken, some had their lungs injured, some had their cultivation reduced to the chi refinement stage. All of them were in a sorry state, looking like they were still in shock. Even Jianxing's body was full of wounds. He seemed to be unable to stand steadily, and knelt on one knee. What happened? It was just an ordinary tribulation. How did it become like this in the blink of an eye? Was this the prelude to being annihilated? Fatty was just about to speak when Jianxing said first, "Master, it's our lack of skills. We couldn't beat those demonic beasts. That's why we were seriously injured. Master, please punish us." "All of you were injured by demonic beasts." Lone Moon frowned and turned to look at Fatty, who was also in a sorry state. "Fatty, didn't you follow us all the way? Why did it become like this? Master. Fatty's face was full of guilt. There were really too many demonic beasts. There were immortal beasts and divine beings among them. I couldn't take care of all of them. Shining, what about you? He looked at the only uninjured person, who was taking out a fruit that had already taken a bite out of it. He had seen before that the demonic beasts on the periphery of the island were all low level. They couldn't have courted death by going deep into the island, could they? Besides, even if Fatty couldn't take care of all of them, he didn't know how to cheat. I'm off work. Shining replied seriously. What got off work? Lone Moon was just about to ask when a severely injured disciple struggled to answer first. Exalted Master. Our injuries were all caused by her. The one who spoke was the disciple named Chung Dong, who was injured by the 6th-level demonic beast at the beginning. Since he was already injured, Fatty naturally paid more attention when they retreated, so he was the one with the least injuries among the 9. Lone Moon's expression darkened instantly. His eyes narrowed slightly. Instantly, he had the illusion that a storm was brewing. Who did you say caused us? Try saying that again. It's her. Chung Dong didn't notice his expression. He reached out and pointed at Shining. His face was full of resentment. Originally, the forest was very safe. There weren't that many high-level demonic beasts. I don't know what she did. She suddenly attracted a herd of beasts. It's her. She called the demonic beasts out to bite us. Huh. Lone Moon laughed even colder. According to you, she has the ability to command demonic beasts? It must be her. Chung Dong said with a face full of certainty. Otherwise, why would there suddenly be so many demonic beasts? And there are so many of us. She's the only one who isn't injured. Those demonic beasts didn't even attack her. She must be in cahoots with those demonic beasts. Ridiculous. Master. Fatty was just about to say something when Lone Moon raised his hand to stop him. Let him continue. Chapter 518. Exalted Master. The more Chung Dong spoke, the more resentful he became. I was already injured then. Junior sister Ji Lin asked her for help. Not only did she not help, she even teased her. She even threatened her. Then many demon beasts suddenly appeared from the forest. And he turned to look at Fatty, gritted his teeth and said with a look of desperation, "And Exalted Master Huize, he had been siding with that bad person along the way. He did not listen to our explanations at all. That's why we were injured so badly." Oh. Lone Moon's expression became calmer. So, you think that all of you were injured, it was all Xin Ying's fault? Chung Dong did not answer, but the anger on his face grew. It was obvious that he thought so. Lone Moon turned to look at the other disciples. What about you? The other 8 looked at each other, seeming hesitant. He added, It's all right, speak honestly. Those who think the same as Chung Dong, stand up. I can prove that what senior brother Chung Dong said is true. Ziyu was the first to stand up. She even took 2 steps towards Chung Dong despite her injuries, glared at Shining and said, She's the one who caused us to end up like this. Chung Dong's eyes flashed with a trace of emotion. His gaze became even more righteous. Perhaps because there was someone taking the lead, the remaining disciples all raised their hands. In the end, half of them actually agreed with Chung Dong's words. The remaining 3 who were the oldest, Jianxing who had been kneeling on the ground, and Ji Lin, who was supporting him, did not raise their hands. The fan in Lone Moon's hand creaked. He took a deep breath to suppress the irritation in his heart. His gaze became even colder. After a while, he looked at the remaining 5 and said, Why didn't you raise your hands? Do you think they are lying? The 3 were stunned, not knowing how to answer for a moment. After a while, it was Ji Lin who spoke, reporting to Exalted Master, I think. Sister Shen does not seem to be such a bad person, although previously, I believe she would not do such a thing to harm her fellow disciples and cause them to die. With that said, she looked hopefully at Shining, who was completely out of the situation. There may be other reasons for this. Junior sister Ji Lin. Chung Dong sighed, his eyes filled with heartache for her. She caused you to end up like this. Why are you still speaking up for her? The other people who raised their hands had the same expression, but their hatred for Shining grew. Lone Moon scanned these people from head to toe. Suddenly, a smile appeared on his face. He asked, enunciating each word. Then, what do you think the punishment for such a serious crime should be? Everyone looked at each other for a while. In the end, it was Chung Dong who said angrily. For a person like her, it wouldn't be too much even if her cultivation was crippled, and she was expelled from the sect. The others nodded in agreement. All right. Lo Moon closed his eyes. He really could not continue asking. He directly stood up and said to Huizhe, Fatty, heal their injuries first. Yes, master. Fatty looked at everyone, shook his head and sighed. Only then did he form a hand seal. And a large-scale rejuvenation array appeared beneath everyone's feet. Everyone who was originally in a sorry state felt their bodies relax. And the wounds on their bodies healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. In a short while their external wounds were as good as new. Fatty took out another bottle of pills and handed it to the nearest disciple, asking him to distribute them to everyone. Eat this, and within 3 days, your meridians will recover. Everyone was overjoyed. They hurriedly distributed the pills and ate them. Indeed, the remaining internal injuries were greatly alleviated. They had already stood up and bowed in Lo Moon's direction. Thank you, exalted Master Lo Moon. No need to thank me. Lo Moon smiled at them, but the smile did not reach his eyes at all. Although your injuries have healed, let's talk about the punishment next. The few of them were stunned, especially the 4 who had just pointed out Shining. Their eyes all lit up. As you wish, Lo Moon said word by word. I will expel you from the sect. From today onwards, the 4 of you are no longer disciples of the sect. What? The 4 of them were shocked, thinking that they had heard wrongly. Fatty, Lo Moon ordered directly, cripple their cultivation, and send them down the mountain. Yes, master. Wait, Chung Dong exclaimed, his eyes filled with fear and disbelief. Why us? The one who did the wrong thing isn't. Before he could finish speaking, Lo Moon could not help but wave his hand. Instantly, a ray of sword chi flew towards him and hit his dantian. Chung Dong only felt a huge pain. All the spirit chi in his body dissipated. He cried out directly. Ah! He fell to the ground again and started rolling. After cultivating for so many years, how did you cultivate such a group of idiots? Lo Moon finally could not take it anymore. He slammed the table and stood up. He seemed to be so angry that his whole body was releasing cold air. In an instant, the table and chair beside him turned into ashes. Shining finally raised her head. Father Neo, the table is 100 spirit stones. Shut up. Oh. Lo Moon then turned his head and continued to rage. It's fine that you are stupid, but you still think so highly of yourselves and are ungrateful. Who was the blind one in the beginning to take in a group of trash like you? The blind fatty. It was me. Fatty directly knelt down. Please forgive me, master. He felt bitter in his heart. The other disciples also knelt down one by one. Their eyes were filled with fear at Lo Moon's sudden anger, but they still looked a little lost. Do you still not know where you are wrong? Lo Moon glanced at the few of them. What kind of place is that island? With your trash foundation establishment cultivation, can you go deep into the forest? Or do you think that there are only low-level demon beasts on such a big island? He took a deep breath and then said word by word. Fatty protected you out, but you can still be injured to this extent. How did you get in? Don't you have any F***king idea? Everyone's heart sank, as if they had never thought of this at all. They all looked up at Shen Ying in disbelief. It was her. How could this be possible? She looked like she had no cultivation at all. But when they entered, there was indeed no problem at all. Later there were so many demon beasts. Could it be because they angered her? Our invincible sect cannot tolerate idiots like you. Exalted Master. Only then did everyone know fear, and began to desperately beg for mercy. Please forgive us, Exalted Master. We know we are wrong. They had seen the power of a cultivator. How could they be willing to return to being ordinary? Fatty, bring them down the mountain. Lo Moon did not have the slightest intention of changing his mind. The entire invincible sect did not let Shen Ying suffer the slightest bit. What right did these immature people have to do this? Fatty actually did not have the heart to do this. After all, He had taught them for so many years. But he also understood that they only had themselves to blame. Yes, master. He directly produced 3 wisps of immortal chi and dispersed the spirit chi in their dantian. He pulled the few who were still crying out and walked out. Wait a minute. Shenning suddenly spoke. Chapter 519. Shenning. Lone Moon glared at her. Don't be so kind-hearted. I just wanted to remind you that you missed one. Shenning took a bite of her fruit, then turned to point at Jilin. Jilin paled instantly, her face full of disbelief. Big sister Shen. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she looked like she was about to cry. Actually, Shenning tilted her head, still looking lazy, her eyes narrowed. I quite like white lotuses, just not the black-hearted ones. Lone Moon frowned. Fatty, bring her down too. Yes, master. Fatty could only come back to pull her. No, I don't want to go down the mountain. Jilin really panicked this time, her tears flowed down. Exalted master. Brother, help me. She hurriedly pulled Jianxing, who was beside her. Jianxing's face was also full of anxiety. He knelt down and begged. Master, little Lin didn't do anything wrong. Why do you have to expel her too? She was his sister after all. Before Lone Moon could speak, Shenning suddenly walked over, took out a familiar-looking bottle, and handed it to Jilin. Here, I picked it up, I'll return it to you. That was a bottle of fasting pills, coincidentally the one that Ziyu gave to Shenning. Jilin paled instantly. Even her grip on Jianxing's hand loosened. She looked at the bottle in disbelief. She knew everything. Fatty was also stunned when he saw that bottle. She was the one who instructed Ziyu to help Shenning abstain from food. Thinking about it, Ziyu was not a pill cultivator, Jilin was. Instantly, his expression darkened. He directly dispersed her cultivation and pulled her out. Oh yes. Seeing that Fatty was about to carry the 5 people out, Lone Moon suddenly added, I seem to have forgotten to tell you, Shenning, she is the sect master of our sect. Now, not only the 5 disciples who were chased down the mountain, even the remaining 4 people widened their eyes, looking at Shenning in disbelief. She was actually the sect master. Shenning. Was Father Neo pushing the blame back? MMP. Master. Jianxing looked at Lone Moon anxiously. I know what you want to say. Lone Moon stopped him from speaking. He turned to look at the remaining 3 disciples and said in a low voice, I'm teaching you cultivation because I really hope that you'll be successful in the future. I hope that you'll be able to pass on the art of cultivation to more people. I hope that you'll be able to protect the world and lessen the number of disasters. But I hope that all of you remember that I chose you because you happen to appear, not because you are irreplaceable. The few of them were shocked. Their expressions changed and they lowered their heads. Even Jianxing put down his cupped fists. Lone Moon looked at the few people who were being brought down the mountain and narrowed his eyes. You should be glad that Chef I Ching is not here today. Otherwise, not only the few of them, but all of you can forget about leaving the mountain alive. Daring to provoke a cheat, did they really think that everyone was Xinjing? It was another watering day. Shenning, is it really okay not to water them today? Mushroom glanced at the row of wilted mushrooms beside the immortal meridian and asked worriedly. I haven't eaten, so I don't have the strength to water them. Shenning leaned against the rock like mud and nibbled on a fruit. I don't know when Chef will be back either. Father Neo said that Chef went to help Rabbit hold the fort and supervise the second batch of students at the Purple Night Palace. He would only return after a period of time, when Rabbit's brainwashing was complete. But didn't Great Immortal Lone Moon go to cook for you? The corner of Xin Ying's mouth twitched. She looked at Mushroom, not knowing what to say. Sai, you don't understand. She would rather eat snacks every day than eat pig's swill. Do you want fruits? She handed one over. Mushroom's eyes brightened. He nodded hard and took it. Shenning, you're the best person in the world. Mushroom gave her a good person card with an innocent look. You're the only person apart from Little Flower who gives me food. Fatty doesn't give it to you? Shenning couldn't help but ask. Don't the 2 of you hang out often? Mushroom shook his head and pouted a little angrily. He only gives me carrots and told me to abstain from eating. A rabbit was indeed Fatty's true love. You're still the best. Mushroom's eyes shone as he looked at her. Just that. Why are the fruits you gave me these few days all bitten? Shinning stiffened. Don't mind such details. Oh. Mushroom didn't ask any more. He thought for a while and added. Huize has been in a bad mood recently. He doesn't even accompany me to plant mushrooms anymore. I'm so bored by myself. What's wrong with him? Shinning asked. He said he doesn't know how to teach disciples anymore. He's worried about what to do in the future. Oh. It's been so quiet here recently. Many people have disappeared. That little sister who gathered herbs last time is gone too. Mushroom said as he chewed on his fruit. You like her a lot? Shinning turned around. She thought for a while before nodding. She's the only one who would talk to me out of those few people. I should like her, right? It frowned, as if he didn't understand. But Huize told me to stay away from her. I don't know why either. She's clearly gone. Why do you want me to stay away? Oh. Shunning continued to nibble on her fruit. Oh right, Shunning. Mushroom tugged at her hand and pointed at the big tree in front. Do you owe that person a lot of fruits? Shunning took a look and saw a person standing under the tree, looking straight at them. He looked familiar. It seemed to be the disciple with the natural sword embodiment that Father Neo had been talking about all day and showing off in front of Chef. She had forgotten her name. Am I the kind of person who would owe a debt? A daughter's debt should be paid by the father. Even if someone owed someone, it should be Father Neo. But he's been there watching us for 4 hours. I see. Xin Ying's eyes narrowed. Then let's go back and watch. She couldn't lose out. Sure. Pure Mushroom nodded vigorously. Hence, 2 pairs of eyes fixed on the person under the tree. As they stared, they didn't forget to nibble on their fruit. For a moment, the entire back mountain was filled with the sound of crunching. Jianxing stiffened for a moment. He held on for less than 10 seconds before shifting his gaze away awkwardly. Instantly, he felt that his actions were extremely stupid. But he also had an inexplicable feeling that he had lost. He coughed, frowned, and retracted his gaze. Then with a cold expression, he walked over and stopped in front of the 2. He cupped his fists and bowed respectfully towards Shining. Greetings, Sect Master. His gaze swept past Mushroom at the side. Shining answered lazily. He clenched his fists by his side and took a deep breath. Jianxing is here this time to ask for forgiveness from Sect Master on behalf of my sister. I hope that Sect Master can forgive her previous rude offense on account of her young age. Chapter 520. Shining glanced at him and still answered lazily. Oh, Sect Master is willing to forgive her? Jianxing was delighted. Then, I won't forgive you. She interrupted. The joy on Jianxing's face froze, and he asked subconsciously, why? Is this very hard to understand? Shunning tilted her head, as if she couldn't understand why he would ask such a question. After thinking for a while, she suddenly turned to Mushroom and said, Mushroom hit him. Mushroom faltered, and immediately nodded obediently. Okay. It bit the fruit in its mouth, stretched out its hands, and formed a mushroom the size of a bowl. Then, it threw it at Jianxing's face with force, and even shouted loudly, Hey! Jianxing didn't react for a moment, only to see that mushroom slap his face. The mushroom that had just formed was soft, so it naturally didn't hurt. It bounced and fell to the ground, but left a black and wet circle on his face. That was a shiitake mushroom. Jianxing was completely stunned, and was about to explode in anger. But Shining looked at Mushroom first. Mushroom, apologize. Oh. Mushroom nodded, took out the fruit in its mouth and said, I'm sorry. Jianxing. Do you understand? Shining asked. If you understand, go back and continue your sword practice. Not all apologies could be forgiven, especially apologies with a purpose. Jianxing glanced at her. Many emotions flashed across his eyes, but finally, they sank helplessly. He cupped his fists and bowed again, then turned and left, a little shakily. Oh also, Shining suddenly spoke again. About what happened before, I really didn't take it to heart. I didn't want to say it at first, But you guys asked for it, and made Father Nyo angry. Now that it's settled, let's stop here. If they still don't give up. She narrowed her eyes. When the time comes, and they make Father Nyo sad, I will really get angry. Jianxing paled. He did come with the intention of getting her to forgive his sister first. As long as she agreed, he could beg Master to bring Jilin back. But he didn't expect that she actually saw through it at one glance. His heart sank, and he immediately quickened his steps and left the back mountain. The mushroom had a blank look on his face. He had absolutely no idea what they were talking about, but he did not pay much attention to it either. He jumped down and picked up the huge mushroom on the ground. He jogged to the side of the immortal vein and planted it. Don't waste it. It was a huge one. Shening had sad enough. Thinking that Father Nyo should have left the kitchen, she waved at Mushroom. I'm going back. Goodbye Shening. Mushroom also waved his tail. Only then did she slowly stand up. Suddenly, a familiar voice came from beside her. Master, Shening hesitated. She looked around, and then remembered the transmission talisman in her storage bag. She reached for it for a long time before taking it out. Chef. Master. The voice was filled with pleasant surprise. I send you messages every day. Why are you only responding now? Oh, I put it in the bag and forgot. There were too many things in the bag. Fortunately, there were some fruits in stock, so he flipped the talisman to the top. Master. The voice in the talisman sounded a little aggrieved, but it was immediately replaced by deep worry. Are you okay? Did he eat well and sleep well? Did he step on the blankets at night? Oh yes, you should have finished the vegetables I left behind, right? I asked Father Nyo to bring back some new ones. Did you get them? If it's not enough. What? Father Nyo has brought vegetables. If she had known earlier, she would not have pretended to water the plants. Shening hurriedly quickened her steps and walked towards the back of the hall. Master, don't worry. I know those are not enough. I've already made more and asked Hong Ming to send them over. Good chef. Fortunately, it was still all right. Master, I will only be back in a few days. You have to stay in the back hall. Don't go down the mountain. She had already gone down once. Also, although the back mountain is smaller than Invincible Sex, you have to find someone to lead the way. If Radish is not here, you can ask Mushroom. Also, don't eat too many fruits. Eat some pastries occasionally. They are all in the storage bag. Be patient and look through them. The sky is turning cold. Although Master is not afraid, it's better to wear a few more clothes. I've put them in the cabinet in your room. If anything happens, you must inform me first. I've already set up the transportation array. I'll rush back immediately. And Master. I miss you so much. Shening stopped in her tracks. She faintly felt a warm current pass through her heart. The corners of her mouth lifted for no reason. Master? Master? Seeing that she did not reply, Chef called out carefully. Was she angry? Shening laughed. Really? Huh. You really miss me that much? Shenying's smile deepened. What do you think? Huh. Chef was stunned. What do you mean, what do you think? Can't say it. Then write 3,000 words of your feelings. There are no restrictions on the style. Poems are excluded. I'll hand in the manuscript in 3 days. He had never received a love letter before. He wanted to give it a try. Oh, okay. Good. 3 days later, a white spirit bird flapped its wings and flew to the back hall. A certain old father recognized the aura that belonged to Chef. Thinking that something big had happened in Purple Night Palace, he conjured a seal. Instantly, the spirit bird turned into a thick stack of letter paper and landed in his hands. Looking down, he saw that it was densely filled with words of longing for a certain foodie. The words were so beautiful and full of emotion that it made one's hair stand on end. Loman's chest tightened. Instantly, he just wanted to slap the thing in his hands hard on a certain person's face. Go to hell with your dog food. Fall. Degree. After returning from a training trip, there were originally 9 disciples, but now they were reduced to 4. Lone Moon was still a little frustrated, but he did not regret it. He chased those disciples down the mountain, not only because of Shining, but because their mentality was indeed not suitable. If they were in the small world in the past, they might not be directly abandoned if they were in a large sect. But these people were originally cultivated by them. They were going to establish their own sects in the future. In other words, they would be the role models for all cultivators in this world in the future. But with their temperaments, who knew what kind of cultivators they would produce? Actually, he could also guess why they were like this. These people who were chased out were all about 10 years old when they first came up the mountain. They had never seen any big waves or experienced any big setbacks. Suddenly becoming cultivators above all living beings, they naturally thought that they were a cut above everyone else. They were too confident in their own identities. Even after Fatty had clearly reminded them, they still believed that Shining was just a mortal to be trifled with. If she was a mortal, she should be below them. Chapter 521. Shining had never shown her strength in front of them, and these disciples rarely saw her. But it was not that they could not see the importance that Fatty I Ching and himself placed on her. Those few older ones would still have some reservations. But they had never experienced this, so they trusted themselves more. They thought that after learning some abilities that surpass mortals, they were different from the rest. They even formed the idea of the strong being respected in their minds. So they targeted her without any reservations. They even thought that even if they were wrong, he would not punish them because of a mortal. Such thinking was completely contrary to Lonmun's original intention. Continuing to let them grow would only make them more arrogant and conceited. They would even completely look down on mortals who were inferior to them. He wanted to find a bodyguard for the human race, not a group of people who would rule and trample on them. He could not help but think back to those people he had taught in the past. The reason why Invincible Sect did not go astray was because Yu Hong and the others were trampled by high-level cultivators in the beginning. They had seen the deepest darkness, so they knew that sunshine was not easy to come by. Fatty was imprisoned in Divine Imperial Sect for many years, and knew the evil in people's hearts, so he cherished the good in the world even more. Even in Song Ren's small world, that group of talisman cultivators who exorcised deviant ghosts, their purpose of cultivation was only to protect the civilians. But these 9 people were completely different, especially those younger ones. They had opportunities that others did not have from the beginning, and this opportunity gave them the ability to be above everyone else. So they naturally became arrogant, no longer seeing the weak in their eyes, thinking that they had already transcended, but forgot that they also came from there in the beginning. Those 3 older ones had experienced things, and Jianxing must have suffered for his sister before, so he still had reservations. But the others completely did not have the reverence that they should have. A group of people who had no reverence for the world. How could he expect them to turn back and protect this world? Lonmun suddenly realized that he could not completely put the hope of the human race on these few people. He had to make more preparations for everything. After all, apart from entering school to teach, there was another word in the world called self-study. As long as there were learning materials, although there would be a difference with or without a teacher, the overall general direction should not be a problem, right? Like Chef, what was the difference if he had a master or not? He still had to rely on self-study. After Lonmun thought it through, he asked Fatty to prepare mini legacy jade slips. Thinking that most people still did not know how to use spiritual energy, he also prepared some books on drawing spiritual energy into the body. Of course, these were all copied by Fatty, who asked this world to not have a photocopier. He also instructed Fatty to forge a batch of spiritual weapons. After that, he started to wander around the continent of the human race like a bookseller, tossing a book here and a jade slip here and there. He even casually opened a few small mystic realms and threw some spirit plant seeds inside, letting them grow freely. Then he returned to Purple Night Palace and grabbed a few immortal meridians. He had to think of a way to dilute it, turn it into a spirit vein, and then return to the human continent to plant it everywhere. The entire continent was filled with spiritual qi. He even gritted his teeth and tossed the spirit artifacts and immortal artifacts he had collected from Fatty back then around, or set up some array formations to set the time for them to appear. Only then did he stop. He suddenly understood Lan Hua's feelings back then. The feeling of throwing treasures everywhere and not being able to take them back was too painful. Hence, he took out his account book and carefully recorded all the accounts on Hong Meng's head. Yes, it was finally not so painful. Hong Meng, who was passing carrots to Rabbit in Purple Night Palace, shivered. He kept feeling that something was missing. After doing all this, Lone Moon heaved a sigh of relief. He believed that in no time, there would be many cultivators appearing on this continent. Of course, he would also be more strict with the teaching of his disciples. After all, they were taught by famous teachers. It would be too embarrassing if they could not compare to those who were self-taught. Fortunately, there were only 4 people left. They were easy to teach. Jian Xing was a sword cultivator. Lone Moon was busy, so he could only use the old method and throw him into the 10-level sword array. As for the remaining 3, they were all taught by Fatty. It was much easier than before. Pills, talismans, arrays, and artifacts all had their own strengths. Especially the oldest one. He was already in his 50s or 60s when he started cultivating. He had gone through a lot of hardships before he succeeded in foundation establishment. He was the last one among them to do so. But he was also the calmest one. Fatty was originally worried that he would give up due to his lifespan before he could cultivate to the end. He didn't expect him to actually persevere all the way. He was also a dual cultivator of talismans and arrays. Even though his cultivation fell behind the others in the beginning, he slowly became the most solid among the 3. He learned the most deeply and was the most hardworking. Occasionally, he would even give pointers to the other 2. Even Fatty couldn't help but pay more attention to him. Considering that they had already adapted to spirit chi, Lone Moon let mushrooms stop planting. The spirit chi on the mountain was also directly changed to immortal chi. This way their cultivation increased even faster. Among them, Jian Xing was the fastest. Ever since the last time, Lone Moon had talked to him a few times. That was his sister after all. It was normal that he couldn't bear to be chased off the mountain just like that. Lone Moon explained the relationship to him. Seeing that he didn't have any resentment, he let him continue learning with ease. He learned very quickly. Usually, he could learn a sword technique that Lone Moon demonstrated once. In less than 10 years, he had reached the 5th level of the 10-level sword array. Although he wasn't as crazy as Chef back then, he was improving at a godly speed. He was indeed a natural sword embodiment. Time passed quickly. What needed to be taught was more or less taught. Those that they couldn't learn in a short time were also remembered. Because the heavenly Tao of this world hadn't been born yet, there was no heavenly tribulation when their cultivation increased. It was just that once they reached the realm, they directly rose. The 3 that Fatty taught were already at core formation. Jian Xing's cultivation was already at the nascent soul stage. Lone Moon felt that it was time for them to go down the mountain and really understand the dangers of this world. Considering the unpleasant experience of the previous experience, Lone Moon decided to bring them there personally. He also dragged Shining along. Why me again? She was unhappy. Chef isn't back yet. Do you think you can survive staying in the sect alone? With no one cooking and watching over her, she would either get lost or starve to death. There was a high chance that it would be the former. Should she tell her that Chef would actually get the spirit bird to send food over every once in a while? Stop talking nonsense. Let's go. Lone Moon couldn't be bothered to explain to her. He directly pulled her down the mountain. Among the 4 disciples, 3 of them were Fatties. Fatty naturally followed along, bringing Mushroom along with him. With Fatty watching over him, Mushroom had been working hard in his cultivation these few years. He cultivated 1 tail into 5. Although he wasn't a big demon yet, he was no longer the little demon he used to be. Naturally, he also learned how to truly transform. He didn't need to drag his tail everywhere to plant mushrooms. Thus, what was originally a disciple experience became a trip for the whole sect. Chapter 522. Lone Moon flew down the mountain with Shun-Ing on his sword. They walked towards the immortal ascension stone by the sea. It was densely pasted with slips of paper. Some were from a long time ago, while some were very new. All kinds of wishes and requests were written on the slips of paper. Ever since the last time they opened the mountain to recruit disciples, mortals would often come here. Some people started pasting all kinds of wishes on the stone, hoping that immortals could help them fulfill them. They had already used the immortal ascension stone as a divine stone. But among these slips of paper, there were also some requests for help, like demons causing trouble. When Lone Moon saw them when he went out to spread his wealth, he would also solve them. Slowly it became a custom. Those who really met with difficulties would come here from far away to seek help from immortals. To distinguish, the slips of paper would be marked in red. He glanced at it and saw 3 red slips of paper. He took them down. 2 of the locations were rather far away. The closest one was a 2-day journey. He glanced at it and decided to make a trip. So he handed the slip of paper in his hand to Jianxing and said, "Let's go to the west, to this place called Xuhong City." "Yes, master." Jianxing nodded and took it. He glanced at it and handed it to the other 3. Just as they were about to fly on their swords, a female voice suddenly sounded. "Brother." A woman who looked to be in her 30s ran over. She looked at Jianxing in the middle with a look of surprise. She looked a little familiar, and she had cultivation, just that she was still in the qi refinement realm. "Little Lin." Jianxing was stunned. He blurted out, "Why are you here?" Fatty was shocked. This person was actually Jilin, Jianxing's younger sister. It was just that her current appearance was no longer that of a young girl. She looked much older than Jianxing. The joy on the woman's face faded and was replaced by worry. Tears even gathered in her eyes. "Brother, I've been waiting here all these years." She turned to look at Lone Moon and knelt down. "Exalted Master, I was young and ignorant back then. I made a huge mistake. I already know I was wrong. I've been regretting it all these years. I dare not ask for Exalted Master's forgiveness. I only hope for a chance to forgive me." Lone Moon's expression darkened. He glanced at her and said, "Really? Then tell me, where did you go wrong?" Jilin was stunned, as if she did not know how to answer. He subconsciously looked at Shen Ying, who was at the side, rolled his eyes and said, I shouldn't have been disrespectful to elder sister Shen. No, it's Master Shen." Heh." Before she could finish speaking, Lone Moon laughed coldly and said, "You don't even know what you did wrong, so how can you say that you did wrong?" If she really knew that she was in the wrong, she wouldn't have appeared here today, much less in such a weak state. Back then, Fatty had crippled their cultivation, but he hadn't harmed their foundations or caused them to lose their memories. If she worked hard enough, she would have long since regained her cultivation of a mere foundation establishment stage. However, she was still in the qi refining stage. Lone Moon did not look at her again. He turned to the others and said, "Once you're ready, we can set off." With that said, he summoned his sword and pulled Shen Ying into the air. "Exalted Master." Jilin looked anxious. Seeing that no one was paying attention to her, she could only look at Jianxing. "Brother." Jianxing took a look at her, held it in, and turned to fly away on his sword. The others followed, but Mushroom took a look at her and called out softly, "Little sister Jilin." "Mushroom." Fatty called her and pulled her away. Jilin still did not give up. She just followed behind them on her sword with a sad expression. Jianxing turned back to take a look. A moment later, he turned back and continued to fly on his sword. "Do you think that I was too heartless to those disciples?" Lone Moon looked at Jianxing and asked. Jianxing was stunned. He shook his head and said, "No, they were the ones who made mistakes and let down Master's expectations. Now they are just returning to their original position. It's just that." He could not help but look back again. Then he said seriously, "Jilin is my sister after all. Although I know that she can never return to the sect, I can't be completely heartless to her." He looked troubled, but there was no resentment in his eyes. It's good that you understand." Lone Moon nodded. This disciple could see clearly. There was no need for him to worry. Although she is no longer a disciple of the sect, there is no need to be too distant to her. It's good that you know your limits. "Yes, Master." Lone Moon did not continue speaking. He continued to fly towards his destination. Shen Ying, who was behind him, suddenly turned half her body from behind Father Niu and looked straight at Jianxing. Jianxing looked up subconsciously, only to see Shining giving him a big smile. He was stunned for a moment. His face was blank. But strangely, he suddenly felt a little flustered. Lone Moon and his disciples flew for 2 days. They finally arrived at Xuhong City. This was a relatively large city in the west. The note described the strange things that had happened in the city recently. A few months ago, the people in the city seemed to have collectively contracted a strange disease. They would inexplicably fall into a deep sleep at night, and everyone would have nightmares. They would only wake up in the morning. The locals thought that there was a demon causing trouble. They went to the seaside to seek help from immortals. In order to avoid alerting the demon, they disguised themselves as a merchant team, entering the city to buy goods. Lone Moon found an inn to stay in and let them ask around. The 4 of them inquired around the city seriously. They only returned after sunset. They began to exchange their findings. I heard that the people here fall asleep every midnight. It seems that the demon only appears at night. But there is no remnant demonic aura in the city. It seems that it is not a demon. The people in the West said that this has been happening for 5 or 6 months. Not only do people fall asleep at night, but there are also people who fall asleep mysteriously during the day. That's right. The people in the East said that too. And those who fall asleep during the day will only wake up after 4 or 5 days. Some even need more than 10 days. After they finished talking, they all looked at Lone Moon in the middle. It was obvious that they had no clue. Did you go to see those people who were unconscious? Lone Moon reminded him. Jianxing finally spoke up. Master, I have gone to see a few of them, but there are no other abnormalities in their bodies. It looks like they are just sleeping. Yes, the oldest of the 4 also said. I have also used spirit chi to check their bodies. There is no trace of demonic aura invading them. Lone Moon nodded. Have you thought of any countermeasures? The 4 of them looked at each other before answering. We plan to wait until midnight tonight. After we have ascertained the situation, we will talk about it. Chapter 523. Then rest first, wait till midnight. Lone Moon announced the end of the meeting. The 4 of them got up and left one after another, returning to their own rooms. Seeing them go far, Fatty turned back and said, Master, although there is no demonic chi in this city, there is ghost chi, I'm afraid. I know. Lone Moon nodded. He could naturally see that the one in this city was not a demon, but an evil ghost. Just keep an eye on them and nothing will happen. It's good to gain experience. Fatty nodded, then got up and was about to leave with Mushroom. Lone Moon turned around, only to see Shining sitting still, looking straight at him. What? Supper? Not today, let's go. Sigh, he missed Chef every day. Shining had to take out the pastries in the bag, eating as she went out. Oh right. Lone Moon suddenly thought of something and added, Shining, at night you better not. Before he finished, he saw that she had gone far away. He could only take back his words, forget it. It was just an evil ghost. The one in this city was not a demon. From the moment they entered the city, he could see it. That was an evil ghost that fed on human vitality. And it was very likely to be promoted to a ghost king soon. The reason why the people in this city were unconscious was because part of their vitality was sucked away. Ghosts were actually easier to deal with than demon spirit beasts, of course, if they could be found first. These disciples had never come into contact with ghosts and spirits. It was normal that they could not figure out what it was. As long as they kept calm, they would not be controlled by the evil ghost. With Shen Ying's ability, even the most powerful evil ghost would not be able to capture her. After all, she was the person who had beaten the Ghost King to tears. So if anything happened to anyone, she would definitely not trouble my ass. For all, where is she? Lone Moon looked at the empty room, 10,000 horses galloping in his heart. Fatty was also confused. I didn't see Miss Shen come out? Find her. Quickly. He should not have let down his guard on that person with no sense of direction. Yes. Fatty was about to go out when he suddenly heard the sound of a bell ringing in his ear. The sound was simple and distant, instantly spreading throughout the entire Tsuhong city, drilling straight into everyone's ears. For a moment, they only felt that their divine sense was shaken, as if something was about to leave their bodies. The four disciples hurriedly circulated their spiritual qi to protect their heart meridians before they could suppress that feeling. Suddenly, there was a clang at the door. Jilin, who had followed them all the way here, had fallen at the entrance of the inn downstairs. There was a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth, and there was a faint sign that her soul had left her body. Little Lin. Jianxing was shocked and directly jumped down from the building. He helped the person on the ground up and separated a bit of spirit qi to protect her heart meridian. Only then did Jilin's expression look a little better. Brother. Jilin looked at the person in front of her with lingering fear. Suddenly, as if recalling something, she looked up at the people upstairs and said, "That's right, exalted master. I saw Sister Shen on the street just now. I called out to her, but she did not respond. It's like she's being controlled by something." Lo Moon was shocked. In a flash, he appeared beside her. "Where did you see her?" "On the main street in front." She pointed outside. Lo Moon turned and rushed out, searching in the direction she pointed. The others hurriedly followed. Only when they came out did they realize that although it was pitch-black midnight, the streets outside were filled with people. Upon closer inspection, they realized that they were all residents of the city during the day. Without exception, all of them had their eyes closed, their faces numb. Like wandering souls, they walked in the same direction, as if they were being controlled by something. There was no sound at all. A disciple mobilized his spirit qi to check their souls, but his face turned pale. Their souls are not in their bodies. The others were stunned. One by one, they pushed open the doors of the houses on the street and walked into the rooms, only to find that there were shadows lying on the beds. They were the souls of those people on the street, but their faces were in pain, as if they were experiencing some terrifying dream. "It's that bell just now," Jianxing said in a low voice. Their souls were shaken out by the bell. Something is controlling their bodies. "Let's find Shining first," Lone Moon said in a low voice and flew up directly. He released his divine perception and scanned the dense crowd on the street. Only then did he realize that the familiar figure on the street was walking step by step with the crowd toward the city entrance. Upon closer inspection, there was a faint trace of ghost qi wrapped around her leg. There. Lone Moon flew down directly. With a wave of his hand, he dispersed the ghost qi on Xunying's leg. He stopped instantly. The others also chased over. Fatty subconsciously said, "Strange, why would Miss Shin be affected by mere ghost qi?" Before he could finish, Lone Moon suddenly turned back with a nervous expression. He lowered his voice and said, "Don't speak." "Ha!" Everyone was stunned and stood rooted to the ground. Did they think that something big had happened to Shining? Upon closer inspection, they realized that she was the same as the other unconscious bodies. Her eyes were also tightly shut, her face expressionless. Only, there was a faint sound of snoring. Fatty. Jianxing. Everyone. Was she sleeping? Her soul did not leave her body at all. She was purely asleep. Before they could react, Loman's serious voice transmission sounded in their ears. It was as if he was facing a formidable enemy. "Go quickly, move the blankets and pillows in her room over. Don't make any sound, if you don't want to die." The disciples were dumbfounded, but they still obediently went back to move the blankets and pillows. "Quick, bring them over to me. Be careful." Lone Moon took the blankets from their hands and took a deep breath. Then, he carefully walked forward and carefully wrapped it around Shining. Then, very carefully, he carried her and gently placed her on the blankets that were laid on the ground. Every move was like a slow-motion replay. He even held his breath the whole time, for fear of making the slightest sound. Only when he put her back in the blankets did he let out a long breath and wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Thank goodness, thank goodness. She didn't wake up. Father was scared to death. Onlookers, master. Jianxing looked at the figures that had already walked out of the city. He could not help but send a voice transmission. The people in this city. Lone Moon turned back to look at them. Then he nodded and said, "Go. If you encounter anything, try to stay far away. I'll stay here and watch Shining. Fatty, look after them." "Yes, master." Fatty nodded and glanced at the 4 disciples. Then, together with Mushroom, they flew away with the crowd that was leaving the city. Jilin turned back to look at Lone Moon. Something flashed across her eyes. Then, she hurriedly rode on her sword and followed. The few of them chased all the way out of the city. Outside the city, the sky was filled with white fog. The fog was so thick that they could only see about 1 foot around them. The few of them had no choice but to fly down to avoid being separated by the fog. Chapter 524. Let's gather together and follow this group of people. Jianxing instructed in a low voice. The others understood and nodded. That demon definitely had a purpose for controlling this group of people. If they followed them, they would definitely be able to find it. Fatty didn't stop them either. He just followed them from a distance. They followed the crowd for a long time. Suddenly, in the white fog in front of them, spots of light appeared, and there were faint sounds of people. Everyone was stunned. They quickened their steps and walked forward. They realized that it was actually the city gate of Tsuhong City in front of them. They had clearly followed the crowd all the way out of the city. Why did they turn back? And right now, inside Tsuhong City, it wasn't dead silent like when they left the city. Instead, it was brightly lit and noisy, as if it was a festival. From time to time, children carrying lanterns ran across the streets, playing and playing. This situation was strange, no matter how one looked at it. What's going on? The disciples were confused. Brother. Jilin subconsciously grabbed Jianxing's hand. Jianxing frowned. After a while he said, "Let's go in and see what's going on." The remaining 3 looked at each other and nodded. Then they all walked into the city. But Mushroom shook her head and refused to go. She said, "I don't like this place. It's very strange. Can we not go in?" They turned back to look at her. They hesitated again. But if they didn't go into the city, they wouldn't know what was going on. "Sister Mushroom, don't be afraid." Jilin took a step forward. With an amiable look on her face, she advised softly, "Why don't you hold my hand? We will protect you." With that said, she even smiled at her with a gentle look on her face. But she clearly looked older than Mushroom, but she called her sister. It felt strange. Mushroom had a good impression of Jilin. She looked at her, hesitated for a while, but still held her hand and followed them in. Fatty frowned. Something flashed across his eyes. Demons were always more sensitive than humans. Unfortunately, he sighed and could only follow them in. The city was even more lively. The streets were brightly lit. Rows of lanterns were hung. Both sides of the road were filled with all kinds of stalls, selling their wares with all their might. It looked like an ordinary night market. The more they looked, the stranger they felt. But they couldn't tell what was going on. After thinking for a moment, he turned around and asked the person beside him, "Big brother, did something big happen today? Why is the city so lively?" The man looked up at him and said, "You must be from out of town. Our city has a night market every month. It has always been like this." "I see." The disciple's eyes darkened and he continued to ask, "Has anything strange happened in the city recently?" "Strange? What strange thing?" The man was stunned and glared at him with some dissatisfaction. "Our Tsuhong City is peaceful. Don't talk nonsense. Go, don't disturb my business." The disciple could only retreat awkwardly. Everyone else's expressions became a little more serious. Everyone in the city was clearly distressed during the day. Everyone in the city knew about the inexplicable lethargy. But why did this person seem to be completely unaware of it? "Brother, where did Master and the others go?" Jilin suddenly pointed to the front of the street and said, "When we left the city previously, he and Sister Shun, Master Shun were clearly here. I remember this street." Everyone looked around and realized that this was indeed the street they left the city on. But Lone Moon, who was originally nervously guarding Shining, was now nowhere to be seen. But they had only left the city for a quarter of an hour. Could it be that they returned to the inn first? Jianxing's expression darkened. "Let's go back to the inn and ask." So the group quickened their steps and returned to the inn earlier. But the strange thing was that the innkeeper didn't seem to recognize them. He thought that they were here to stay, and that Lone Moon and Shinning weren't in the inn. The more they thought about it, the stranger they felt. They all looked at Jian Xing, who had the highest cultivation. Uncle Master Jian Xing, what should we do? He was Lone Moon's disciple, the same generation as Fatty, so everyone called him Uncle Master. Let's split up first and ask around. We'll decide after we figure out the situation, Jian Xing suggested. 4 hours later, we'll meet here again. The few of them nodded and dispersed in all directions. Even Mushroom was pulled out by Jilin. Fatty didn't go out to ask around. Instead, he sat down in the inn and waited for them to return. 4 hours later, they returned to the inn, but their expressions were not very good. I went to ask around. The people in the city seemed to have forgotten that they were unconscious. It's the same here. I even specially went to the few families that I asked around in the day. They even chased me out. These people seem to be completely different people in the day and at night. Could it be, this is just an illusion? These people are all fake? The few of them paled. If this was an illusion, then how powerful must the other party be to be able to replicate an entire city? No. Jian Xing shook his head. They are indeed all people. They don't look like they were created by spells. Everyone was silent. They had no clue at all. Although they were unwilling, they could only turn to look at Fatty beside them. Exalted Master. Jian Xing cupped his fists and said, please give us some pointers. Fatty smiled. Seeing that they were indeed stuck in a bottleneck, he reminded them, this is indeed not an illusion, but a dream. Dream. Everyone was shocked and looked at each other. Do you still remember what was written on that piece of paper asking for help? Fatty glanced at them before continuing. It said that at night, everyone will fall into a nightmare and only wake up in the morning. The place we are in now is their dream. Someone has taken control of their consciousness and entered the same dream. The few of them were stunned. No wonder those people completely forgot what happened in the day. They also forgot that they would fall asleep at night. After all, it was a dream. When they first saw the white fog, they were probably already pulled into the dream. But didn't they say it was a nightmare? Jilin asked doubtfully. I see that everyone is quite happy. It doesn't look like a nightmare? The other disciples thought so too. Fatty smiled and said, very soon it won't be. What? The few of them were stunned. Before they understood what he meant, they suddenly heard a scream. The streets suddenly became chaotic. People kept screaming. A group of people ran past them with panicked expressions. All of them ran back in a panic. What's going on? They stood up directly. The next moment, they suddenly heard a loud roar. Roar! Chapter 525. Instantly, the sound spread through the entire Tsuhong city. Even the ground shook. The few of them walked out of the inn and saw that a huge monster had suddenly appeared outside the city gates. It was pitch black, and it was impossible to see its appearance clearly. However, pairs of blood-red eyes were glowing as they stared at the city. It was extremely tall, almost twice the height of the city wall when it stood up. It waved its huge claws and slapped hard, pushing down the city wall. Terrified screams could be heard below the city wall. Is this the monster that is harming the city? The disciple subconsciously wanted to pull out the sword in his hand. Don't forget, Fatty reminded. This is a dream. The disciples paused and looked up at the monster in front of them. Could this monster be fake? But it clearly looked so real. Everyone's expression changed. For a moment, they didn't know if they should attack. But the monster was getting closer and closer. It pushed down the city wall directly and was biting towards the panicking crowd. They could even smell the thick stench of blood coming from its huge mouth. The people in the city were frantically running around, but there were too many of them. They couldn't all escape, and there were always a few who fell behind. So the monster bit down, and instantly blood splattered. It was a ghastly sight. It even stretched out 7 or 8 octopus-like claws, entangling those who were running away, and throwing them into its mouth one by one. There was a faint crunching sound of chewing. Everyone's hands tightened, and they desperately resisted the urge to attack. On the other side, Something flashed across Jilin's face. She suddenly pulled out her sword and shouted, "I can't watch anymore. Even if it's an illusion, I can't bear to see this monster wantonly hurting people." With that said, she rushed over. Jilin. Everyone wanted to stop her, but it was too late. They watched as she flew over on her sword. She summoned a blazing flame and shot it towards the monster. Unfortunately, her cultivation was ultimately too weak. Not only did she not cause any damage to the monster, but she was also entangled by its claws. She was about to be eaten. Little Lin. Jianxing was shocked. He directly pulled out his sword and rushed over. The other disciples also rushed over and began to attack the monster. Jianxing even chopped off one of the enemy's tentacles and saved Jilin. Fatty took a look at them and shook his head. Indeed, they were lacking in experience. Under the joint attack of several people, the monster gradually lost the strength to resist. It suddenly let out a miserable cry and began to flee in the direction of the city gate. The few of them naturally wouldn't let it escape, so they all ran towards it. Jianxing even summoned the sword array directly. Instantly, thousands of swords formed by spirit qi rained down from the sky towards the monster below. Instantly, the monster was nailed to the city gate. The monster let out a blood-curdling screech, and its huge body collapsed with a loud rumble. All the disciples heaved a sigh of relief, but before they could feel the joy of victory, a familiar roar came from behind them. Suddenly, another identical monster appeared behind them, slowly crawling into the gap in the city gate. What's going on? Everyone was shocked. Why would there be more? They had no choice but to turn around and continue to deal with this monster. However, these monsters seemed to be endless. After killing one, another identical one would immediately appear. It was as if they were deliberately trying to waste time with them. Only then did they start to recall Fatty's words. Did he stop them just now, because he had already guessed that this would happen? He turned around to look at the panicking people in the city, but realized that although they were fleeing with all their might, none of them ran out of the city gate. It was as if they were trapped by something. "Brother, look, what's that?" Jilin suddenly pointed at the corner of the wall and said. Jianxing turned around and saw that on the gap in the city wall that was just pushed down by the monster, there was a faint red glow, as if it was the glow of some sorcery. Without thinking much, he waved his sword and shouted to everyone, "There's an array on the city wall. Attack that city wall." Fatty, who was watching the battle below, paled. "Stop." Unfortunately, it was too late. Jianxing's sword was already waved towards the city wall. Although the other sorcery was a step late, it also deviated towards the city wall. With a loud rumble, a large piece of the city wall collapsed. In an instant, like dominoes being pushed down, not only the city wall, but everything in the city also began to collapse. The originally brightly lit city began to distort and change shape, as if the whole world was disappearing. All the disciples were shocked. Before they could even see clearly what was happening, they felt their bodies become heavy and they fell straight down. In the next moment, their vision blurred, and they appeared on a piece of flat land outside the city. Around them stood those dazed people who had left the city previously. Everything was the same as when they had just left the city, as if they had never been to that brightly lit city at all. Could it be that their primordial spirits had also left their bodies just now? Before they could think carefully, they felt their primordial spirits becoming unstable. A gush of blood surged up, and they all spat out blood. And in the next moment, the people who were originally standing around them suddenly began to collapse powerlessly. In a short while they were all lying on the ground. The few who were injured looked at each other. What was going on? But when they looked up, they saw Fatty with a solemn expression. "Oh no!" Fatty looked up at the sky that was already beginning to brighten. Those living souls in the city. He turned around and summoned his flying sword. "Exalted Master, what exactly is this?" All the disciples still looked confused, completely unaware of what was going on. Fatty glared at them somewhat angrily, then explained, "Have you all forgotten that the souls of the people in the city have all left their bodies? How are they going to return to their bodies if their dreams are directly interrupted?" Fatty said as he flew up on his flying sword. All of you stay here and look after their bodies. Don't let that evil ghost come near." With that said, he turned and flew directly towards the city. At this moment in the city, Lone Moon, who was guarding a certain foodie who had woken up, looked up at the sky and immediately frowned. He got up and walked into a house next to him. On a closer look, indeed, the living soul lying on the bed began to become unstable, faintly showing signs of turning into a ghost. But his body still did not return. It seemed like it was too late. Lone Moon's expression darkened. Seeing that the sky was about to brighten, he walked out and conjured a seal with both hands. A large array appeared under his feet, instantly enveloping the entire city, temporarily suppressing the living souls in the city from dispersing. The next moment the sun slowly rose. A certain someone who had slept soundly on the streets for the whole night also opened his eyes. At one glance, he saw the person sitting beside him with a face full of resentment. "Hey, Father Neo, good morning." "Morning, my ass." Lone Moon directly rolled his eyes. "In the future, before you sleep, you'd better tie a rope to the head of the bed." Even a mere gust of ghost chi could be drawn away. How deep was his sleep? Didn't he have any King idea how grumpy he was when he woke up? Chapter 526. Huh? Shining was confused. Only then did she realize that she was not lying where she slept last night. She blinked blankly. Forget it. She couldn't be bothered to think about it. It's not important. Lone Moon was about to scold her when Fatty flew back hurriedly. "Master, the people in the city." He had just landed when he felt the array formation on the ground. He heaved a sigh of relief. Luckily, Master discovered it first. "What happened?" Lone Moon glanced at him. "Didn't you go to catch the evil ghost? Why can't the people in the city return their souls instead?" That evil ghost must have sensed danger, so it summoned the ghost fog and sucked them into the dream realm. Fatty said awkwardly. "They accidentally broke the dream realm in advance. Those people's bodies did not return in time, so..." Lone Moon's expression darkened. What was this? They were in cahoots with that evil ghost, weren't they? "Master, time is pressing. I've already asked them to guard those people's bodies outside the city. Let these people's souls return first." Lone Moon nodded. Fatty then took out a gourd Dharma artifact and opened it. He conjured a seal while chanting. In a short while, living souls turned into streams of light and entered the gourd. It took him half an hour to collect the last bit of living souls and seal the mouth of the gourd. "Let's go." Lone Moon flew up on his sword. "You go too." He brought Shining with him. "Shining, where's breakfast?" The bodies of the people in the city were not far from the city. From afar, they could see the ground full of people lying on the ground. 3 disciples were guarding them. Seeing the 3 of them coming over, they immediately welcomed them with joy. "Exalted Master, you're back." Fatty glanced at the 3 of them. "Where are the others? Why are there only the 3 of you?" Jianxing, Mushroom and Jilin were all gone. The trio's expressions changed. They exchanged a look before replying. "Exalted Master, after you left, a malevolent ghost suddenly appeared." "Master." Miss Jilin was caught by it. Uncle Master Jianxing and Mushroom both chased after her. Fatty's expression darkened. He turned to look at Lone Moon. "Master, you stay here and help the people in the city return their souls. I'll go take a look with Shining." Lone Moon instructed. He pulled Shining and followed Jianxing's aura. The 2 of them did not fly for long before they suddenly felt their surroundings become unusually cold. In the mountain forest in front of them, a large amount of ghost chi had gathered. It occupied the entire mountaintop, and even sunlight could not penetrate it. Lone Moon frowned. Was it about to become a ghost king? He directly flew down and followed the weak auras of a few people to the entrance of a cave. Half of the cave entrance had collapsed, as if someone had fought here. Looking at the remnant sword chi in the surroundings, it should be Jianxing. He summoned a sliver of immortal chi to cover his entire body, forcing the ghost chi to retreat. Subconsciously, he turned around and said, "Shining, the ghost chi here is too thick you." Before he could finish speaking, he turned around and found that the ghost chi around them had already distanced itself from her. It was at least 2 to 3 meters away, even further than the ghost chi he had dispersed with his immortal chi. What? Shenning tilted her head. I'm fine. I'm going in. Motherf asterisk her. She clearly had a dispelling buff. How did she get controlled by the ghost chi last night? They walked directly into the cave filled with ghost chi. The ghost chi inside was even thicker. But with every step Lone Moon took, the surrounding ghost chi was dispersed by the immortal chi. Although he could completely disperse all the ghost chi in this cave, thinking of the people inside, he did not do so. The cave was very big, and there were forks everywhere. It was like a natural maze. But this was not a difficult thing for Lone Moon. With a sweep of his divine perception, the situation of the entire cave was clear. He walked directly in the direction of the three people. The only thing he had to worry about was a certain person who had no sense of direction. This way. Oh! Lone Moon pulled back a certain person who had taken a wrong turn for the umpteenth time. They finally walked to the innermost part of the cave. The surrounding ghost chi was even thicker, mixed with the smell of blood. There were also faint sounds of fighting, and waves of shrill ghost cries in front of them. It's right in front. Lone Moon quickened his pace and walked over. After a big turn, a blood pool appeared in front of him. There were a few corpses floating in it. Above the blood pool, a female ghost with a horrifying appearance and a face full of rotten flesh was fighting with Jian Xing. That evil ghost was already a half-step ghost king. It was not weaker than a nascent soul cultivator, but the ghost chi on its body was a little weak. It seemed to be heavily injured. Obviously, it was interrupted at the critical moment of advancement and suffered a backlash. Jian Xing was also injured quite a bit. His body was full of bloodstains, and the wounds were still carrying ghost chi. Seeming to notice a stronger aura coming in, that evil ghost panicked and could not care much anymore. Instantly, it released all the ghost chi in its body and blocked Jian Xing's attack. Its claws reached down and directly sucked up the blood in the blood pool. The original horrifying appearance began to recover. In a moment, it turned into a beautiful woman. The ghost chi on its body was instantly tens of times thicker. It was trying to forcefully advance. Jian Xing's hand paused. He was shocked by the sudden increase in the opponent's suppression. Just as he was about to counterattack, that ghost king directly abandoned him and rushed towards Lone Moon and Xin Ying's direction. Master! Jian Xing's expression changed. He directly mobilized all the spirit chi in his body and slashed with all his strength. In the next moment, that ghost king let out a sharp and piercing scream. It was hit directly. The ghost chi around it dissipated instantly. The body that had just gathered seemed to have broken and dissipated. But suddenly, a red light shot out from the center, rushing towards Xin Ying's direction. Be careful, Lone Moon subconsciously reminded. He was about to make a move, but he saw that the red light stopped. Xin Ying was holding it tightly with one hand. That red light struggled desperately in her hand like a loach. But no matter how hard it tried, it could not escape. It could only let out a series of sharp and piercing sounds. Alright, he would be retarded to worry about a cheat. Xin Ying grabbed that red light and looked at it curiously. She even flipped it left and right. That sharp sound became louder, as if it was screaming. Exalted Master. The exhausted Jian Xing also walked over. His face was pale. He must have gone through a tough battle. He looked down at the red light in Xin Ying's hand. This is the remnant soul of that evil ghost just now. It should be. Lone Moon nodded. Jian Xing's eyes darkened. He said directly, this evil ghost has done many evil things. In order to prevent it from recovering, even if it is a remnant soul, we should destroy it as soon as possible. Lone Moon frowned and looked up at him. It is already a remnant soul. It can't recover anymore. If we continue to attack, it will only be destroyed. But Jian Xing was stunned. His face was full of confusion, as if he didn't know how to handle it. Chapter 527. Lone Moon took out a Dharma talisman and sealed it on Xin Ying's hand. Immediately, the red light went into the talisman. Bring it back to the mountain and use spirit chi to cleanse the malevolent chi on it. Then send it to Samsara. With that said, he was about to keep the talisman, but after some thought, he stuffed it into Shen Ying's storage bag. The immortal qi on him was too thick. He was afraid that he might accidentally destroy the remnant soul. It was safer to put it on Shen Ying. Yes, master. Jianxing nodded. He glanced at Shen Ying and said nothing. Suddenly the ground shook. Without the support of the evil ghost's ghost qi, the mountain started to become unstable. This place is going to collapse. Let's leave quickly. Lone Moon reminded. Wait, Jianxing turned around. Mushroom is here too. He pointed to the side. Indeed, Mushroom was lying there, seemingly unconscious. Lone Moon went up and picked her up. He looked around but didn't see anyone else. He asked subconsciously, "Where's your sister? Wasn't she captured?" Jianxing's face paled. His eyes dimmed. He lowered his head with some sadness. Lone Moon understood instantly. It seemed that he was too late. He didn't know what to say. He sighed and didn't stay any longer. He set up an array and teleported them out. Before the four returned to the flat ground, they saw Fatty and the others rushing over. "Master, have you dealt with that evil ghost?" Fatty quickened his steps and walked over. But he saw the person he was carrying. "Mushroom, what happened to her?" Fatty hurriedly took her and examined her carefully. She was injured by that evil ghost and fainted. Lone Moon explained casually. "That ghost is very good at absorbing souls. Her divine soul might be unstable." Fatty's expression changed. He hurriedly took Mushroom's hand and sent some immortal qi into her. Indeed, her primordial spirit was about to leave her body. He hurriedly cast a spell to help her stabilize her primordial spirit. Lone Moon turned to look at Jianxing behind him. He took out a recovery elixir and said, "You're injured quite badly. Eat the elixir and rest here for a while." "Thank you, master." Jianxing took the elixir and ate it. Instantly, the wounds on his body began to heal. Instead, the other disciples looked behind them and seemed to realize that one person was missing. They couldn't help but ask, "Uncle Master Jianxing, where's Miss Jilin? Why didn't she come back with you?" Jianxing, who had just sat down, swayed a little. He clenched his fists by his side and said in a low voice after a while, "I didn't make it in time. She was harmed by that evil ghost." Everyone's faces turned pale, and they couldn't help but sigh. Especially that disciple who spoke earlier. He didn't know what to do. Though Jilin had already been expelled from the sect, she was, after all, a partner who had once cultivated together. Though she had made a mistake along the way, it was not a crime worthy of death. After all, there was still a bit of friendship, especially since she was Jianxing's younger sister. The reason why Jianxing trained harder than anyone else was partly because of this sister. As long as he finished his studies and went down the mountain, they would be reunited one day. It was a pity that the world was unpredictable. The scene quieted down. No one knew how to comfort him. Lone Moon sighed as well. In a low voice he said, "This time, regarding the matter of the evil ghost, it was your misjudgment. That's why so much trouble has occurred. In the beginning, not only did you not recognize the cause of the trouble, you even shattered the dream realm in advance, causing the souls of the entire city to be unable to return." He glanced at these disciples. He had to admit that they were indeed inexperienced. If not for Fatty and I temporarily stabilizing those living souls, I'm afraid the citizens of the entire city would have been lost. Everyone lowered their heads in guilt. It was indeed their fault. They thought that something that could affect the entire city must be something like a large demon beast. Who would have thought that it was actually something like an evil ghost? That's why the entire city was almost harmed. After this incident, all of you need to know that no matter how powerful a cultivator is, he is not omnipotent. He can also fail miserably. You must not be arrogant and forget your original intentions. Originally, this matter was very easy to resolve. There was no need to wait until nightfall. All they had to do was find the ghost qi and destroy the nest. In addition, the yang qi was stronger in the day, so the evil ghost was easier to deal with than at night. But none of them noticed this. They didn't even notice the ghost qi in the city. Needless to say, he and Fatty were a little disappointed. "Yes, exalted master." All the disciples replied in unison. Lone Moon didn't say much either. After all, everyone was injured. Previously, they were forcefully pulled into the dream realm. and then they broke the dream realm and were ejected out in advance. Other than Fatty, who was prepared in advance, all of them were more or less injured. He thought for a while and took out the other 2 pieces of paper asking for help. Then he looked at everyone and made arrangements. Fatty, bring Mushroom and Jianxing back to the sect to recuperate first. Let the 3 of them deal with the next 2 places. Fatty looked at the heavily injured Jianxing, then at the unconscious Mushroom in his arms. He nodded. Yes, master. Jianxing also recovered some of his essence qi and stood up. Fatty then took out a Dharma artifact and flew away with the 2 of them. In the next few days, Lone Moon wasn't in a hurry. He brought the 3 disciples and dragged Shining, who wanted to slack off all the time, towards the remaining 2 places. If they encountered other matters along the way, they would settle them along the way. What was surprising was that along the way, they actually met other cultivators. But their cultivation levels were generally not high. Most of them were at the 1st or 2nd level of qi refinement. Lone Moon thought that the wealth he gave away earlier must have worked. Some people had already picked it up and started cultivating. They even met a cultivator who had just reached foundation establishment not long ago in a small town. He brought a group of people at the 1st or 2nd level of qi refinement and was about to deal with a 4th level demon beast. They even helped him along the way. After asking, they found out that the foundation establishment cultivator had picked up a book a few years ago and tried to cultivate it. He didn't expect it to really work, so he spread it out. Now, everyone in the town had started to cultivate it. Lone Moon expressed that he was very satisfied with the effect of giving away wealth. But without guidance, their cultivation was much more difficult. They searched towards the address on the paper. This time, they didn't encounter any major problems. It was just 2 low-level demon beasts that caused trouble. The 3 disciples easily settled them and didn't cause any more trouble. But the state of mind of the 3 was still very obviously different from before. That unique air of arrogance about them also lessened. When they encountered danger, they were also more cautious. When they finished all 3 missions and returned to the sect, it was already 3 months later. The moment they entered the door, a gust of wind with sword qi blew over instantly. Then, it directly stopped in front of Shining. Master! A familiar voice sounded instantly, with a strong sense of joy and longing. Hey chef! Shining waved and greeted. You're back. There's supper again. Chapter 528. Master! Chef stared intently at the person in front of him. His mind and eyes were filled with her figure. The hands by his side loosened and tightened several times, as if he wanted to do something, yet he was somewhat hesitant. Only his gaze became more focused, as if something soft was slowly flowing out from within. Lone Moon. He felt that it was the smell of dog food. All right, everyone go and rest. He waved at the 3 disciples behind him. Don't eat dog food here. The 3 of them bowed and followed Lone Moon away quickly. However, they couldn't help but turn back and look at the 2 people in front of the mountain gate. These disciples rarely went to the back hall. In addition, I Ching had left the sect for many years, so they didn't know his relationship with Shening. They couldn't help but feel confused. Did they hear wrongly? Just now, they heard Exalted Master I Ching call Exalted Master Shen Master, but they didn't look like master and disciple? Chef didn't move the whole time. Only when everyone left did he finally reach out and hug the person in front of him, so tightly that there wasn't a single gap. His warm breath, accompanied by his low voice, entered the bottom of her ears, faintly carrying a hint of grievance. Master! Master, sigh. Master. What? He just called her over and over again, as if he didn't get tired of it. However, his voice became lower and lower. Master, huh? Master. Are you making up the number of words? Shunning tilted her head. Chef was stunned for a moment. Then he hugged her even tighter. Only then did he change the sentence, but the feeling of grievance was stronger. Master, I miss you. I miss you very much, very much. Shunning paused for a while, then reached out and hugged him back. Her face was a little hot for no reason. Aya. Even an old fox would be tempted by such straightforward words. So she couldn't help but reply, "Me too." Chef was stunned for a moment. The corners of his mouth began to rise uncontrollably on his usually expressionless face. He lowered his head and buried it in the hair behind her, hugging her even tighter. He hugged like this for a long time, until Xinying's hands were a little sore. "Chef. Can you cook now?" As the saying goes, one can't forget one's roots. Not even as a chef. With Chef back, Xinying finally returned to her wonderful life of eating 5 meals a day. Perhaps because Father Niu limited her to 3 meals a day for too long, Xinying actually felt a little full. Thus he went out for a stroll. He was going to the back of the mountain, but he ended up going to the front hall instead. For disciples were practicing their spells on the training grounds. Ever since they went out, the cultivation of the few disciples taught by the fatty had improved. One of them even directly broke through to the late-stage gold core. This was mainly because of the improvement of the state of mind. On the other hand, Jianxing's cultivation didn't improve much because he was heavily injured. It had been nurtured in the sect for a few months, and now it was back. He was still the one with the highest cultivation among the 4. What's more, he had learned all the sword techniques that Father Niu had taught him. He was already showing signs of developing sword intent. A few days ago, she heard Father Niu bragging in front of Chef, saying that he should be the first to leave the mountain among the 4 of them. With his nascent soul cultivation, it shouldn't be a problem for him to establish a sect. Father Niu already had the idea of letting him leave the mountain the last time they went out for experience. But he happened to be heavily injured, and only came back to recuperate for a period of time. But it was only a few days away. After Lone Moon tested him again, he would let him go down the mountain. The first immortal cultivation sect in this plane was a sword cultivation sect. These few days, Father Niu would come to show off occasionally, as if he had finally fulfilled some long-cherished wish of his. Xinying glanced at the few of them and didn't care. Just as she was about to slip back, she saw a familiar figure sitting beside the training grounds, staring seriously at the 4 of them. She hesitated for a moment, then turned and walked over. "Mushroom," she called out, but the other party didn't respond. She could only walk a few steps closer and directly sit beside it. "Does this look good?" "Huh." Mushroom got a fright and turned to look at her. After a while she smiled and said, "Xinying, why are you here?" "I just walked and arrived." It was definitely not because she wasn't here and she got lost. She replied casually. "Why didn't you go to the back mountain to plant mushrooms?" "There was no one to lead the way. Huizhe said there's no need to plant mushrooms anymore, so I didn't plant them." Xinying paused in the act of eating the pastries and turned to look at her. After a while she slowly responded, "Oh." She looked down at the little stool under her, and continued to ask, "Are your injuries healed?" She nodded hard. "Huizhe helped me heal them, I'm fine now. Look." With that said, she even opened her hand for her to look, her face innocent. Xinying tilted her head and held her hand, and really looked at it. "How long did it take to heal you?" "I'll be fine in a month." She smiled even more happily. "I'll be fine before you guys come back." "Oh." Xinying's eyes narrowed. She patted the pastry crumbs on her hand, and opened the bag to take out a bright red fruit. She handed it over. "Want some?" Mushroom's eyes lit up. She nodded like a chick pecking at grains. "Yes." With that said, she nodded and took it over. She held the fruit with both hands and started munching on it. She quickly finished the fruit, and turned back to look at her with sparkling eyes. She said sweetly, "Thank you." Xinying's eyes darkened instantly. She retracted her lazy aura. "Wrong answer." "Ah." Mushroom was stunned. In the next moment, Xinying suddenly reached out and strangled her neck. "You forgot to give me a card. Good person card." "You." Before she could say anything, her whole body was lifted up by one of Yao Xi's hands. A terrifying aura instantly surged towards her. The other party's grip wasn't very tight, but she felt like she couldn't breathe. Boundless terror engulfed her. It was as if there was only one word left in her mind, death. Her voice resounded in his ears, enunciating every word. "Speak. Where's Mushroom?" What are you doing? Before the other party could answer, the practicing disciples had already surrounded them. The one in front was Jianxing, still holding a practice sword in his hand. What are you trying to do? Jianxing glanced at Shening and looked worriedly at the person in her hand. There was even a hint of nervousness in his tone. Hurry and let go of Miss Mushroom. The other disciples all spoke up. Exalted Master, you. Exalted Master. Mushroom's injuries have just healed. If she really offended you in any way, please don't hold it against her. Yes, Exalted Master. Mushroom may be a demon, but she's a good one. Can you let her go first? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.